Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our council meeting. As traditional, we always start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. I thought we might have a little fun with that tonight. I'd like to invite any of the kids from Walnut Elementary or the Titans team to come on down front here and say it with me. What do you think, kids? Let's... Testing. Come on, kids. Here's our Titans football team. Here's our Walnut Elementary kids. Gather around. All right. Let's wait for the rest of the kids. Great costumes. Wow. Wave hi to your parents. Hi, Mom and Dad. There we go. All right. Oh, that's a cute costume. You kids, come on. You can come on in front here. Come right in front of me. I'm tall, so you can stand in front of me. It's okay. Come on. Come on in. There you go. Oh, you're an elephant. Okay. Come on, kids. Come on, kids. Okay. All right. Now, who knows the pledge really well? All right. Since you're standing right next to me, would you like to lead us in the pledge? All you have to do is start it out, and we'll say, I put my hand, or put your hands over your hearts and follow me, and then you recite the pledge. You want to try it? All right.
Please stand. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hooray! Your name, young man? Jonah. Good job from Jonah, huh? All right, kids, thank you. All right, that was fun. Okay. Now we move on to the serious business of the Thousand Oaks City Council. Sometimes it's serious. First of all, I've asked for the roll call.
Councilmember Fox.
Here.
Councilmember Bill De La Pena.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Price.
Here.
Mayor Adam.
And I'm here. So I don't believe we have any requests for continuances of any public hearings or agenda items, so I'm going to come down to the podium and we'll do some special presentations. All right, thank you. Well, as most of you know, we have an elementary school here today, and we have the Titans football team. It's the Walnut Elementary. I'd like to ask Colleen Brenner Schmidt, who represents the United Association of Conejo Teachers, to join me here at the podium.
So, and actually, we'll bring them all back down again.
All right, come on, kids. Come on back down.
I have to be properly attired.
Well, you look great.
Thank you.
The cat in the hat. So, March 2nd, 2015 is the 111th birthday of Dr. Seuss, a beloved author. We all grew up on Dr. Seuss. It's also Read Across America Day. And the Conejo Valley Unified School District and the Unified Association of Conejo Teachers is co-sponsoring this event to promote literacy among our students. And I'd like to ask you, Colleen, to tell us a little bit more about Read Across America. And then introduce your kids.
Okay. For many years, the National Education Association, the California Teachers Association, and the Unified Association of Conejo Teachers have joined forces across the nation to celebrate the joys of reading a great book, because no one stays up late at night with a flashlight under the blanket to read a reading worksheet. but they will when the literature is wonderful and alive and entices all of us to read. This year, on Monday, March 2nd, we'll be celebrating Read Across America, because the more children read, the better they read, and the more they read outside of school, the better they do in school. This year, Read Across America Committee has, last year we piloted a new project, and this year we're working with California Reads so that we are focusing on reading not just one day a year, but every day. And rather than just one day and one book, California Reads offers quarterly book recommendations for 4 age groups. And if you go to cta.org, California, you will find more information. And across the district, students will be celebrating the joy of reading, and we ask you to join us at the Thousand Oaks and Newbury Park Libraries on Monday, March 2nd, from 4 to 5:30. Stop by to listen to a story, do some crafts, and maybe even make your own hat. And now I'd like to introduce Jer Alderson from Walnut School and the cast of her performance.
Every year at Walnut Elementary, we celebrate Read Across America with a production honoring Dr. Seuss and all the characters. And we thought tonight, because a lot of people don't always know all those wonderful characters, we would introduce them to you. I would like to start with, from the Grinch, the Who's from Whoville. Who's go to the carpet? Who's go to the carpet?
Oh, right here. Jer?
You want me at the microphone?
I think it's not that.
Thank you. And also from the book of the Grinch, we have the Grinch.
Jer?
We have the Grinch and his dog, Max.
We have from
The Cat in the Hat. We have Thing 1 and Thing 2. Also a very famous character from the Pond of Solomon Son, Yertle the Turtle and his turtles. We have the famous elephant Horton. We have two famous books that go together. McElliot's Pool, where someone can fish all day, and Redfish, Bluefish.
Joy to Walnut School.
have A Tale of Great Woe, the Lorax. Famous dish to prepare. We have green eggs and ham. Unknown book to many people, Fidwick the Moose. Our walnut theme song that we sing every year, and I'm proud to say our multi-purpose room booms and you can hear us out on the street.
As you can see, the students at Walnut School and across the Conejo Valley read every day. So, you're never too old, too wacky, too wild to pick up a book and read with a child.
You're never too busy, too cool, or too hot to pick up a book and share what you got.
In schools and community, let's gather around. Let's pick up a book and pass it around.
There are kids all around you, kids who will need someone to hug, someone to read.
Come join us March 2nd at both libraries that day and make this America's Read to Kids Day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We got to hear Walnut Elementary's greatest hits, right? Well, kids, you'll find as you go through life, reading is essential to success in life. Very important thing, so stick with it. And I'm going to present Colleen with a proclamation in honor of Read Across America Day, and I really appreciate what you're doing to promote reading in our youth, and our adults for that matter. Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, kids. All right. Tonight is youth night at the Thousand Oaks City Council meeting. We have a young group of boys here representing the 2014 Thousand Oaks Titans Pee Wee football team, 8 and 9-year-olds, Super Bowl 22 champs. Lance Martin, Coach Martin, you want to come on down here and join me at the podium? The Titans finished the regular season with a 6-2 record. They beat the Santa Clarita Chiefs 46-14 and finished the season 10-2 with 6 consecutive wins. I take it you didn't pass on the 1-yard line.
We did not.
Did not do that. All right, good. So, during the season, the Titans outscored their opponents 390-144, posted 3 shutouts. Way to go, boys. The offense accumulated over 3,000 yards of offense. Half the team scored touchdowns. 46 points scored by the Titans Pee-wees was the 5th highest in PYFL Super Bowl history. That's not bad for a group of boys 8 and 9 years old. Congratulations, boys. Lance, you want to tell us a little bit more about the team? The boys can come down if they like. Sure. Yeah, boys, come on down. That's fine, yeah, we're good. Yeah, we can get up on one of the pictures. Okay. Go ahead.
Hey guys, thanks for being down here. I guess one more thing. Just again, it was a great season. One of the things we stressed to the guys was flush mistakes. Don't worry about it. You know, there's a lot of pressure put on the little guys or any athletes these days to do the best. And our goal with the Titans organization is to keep it more local oriented and keep the guys not worrying about mistakes and just having fun out there. So that was our goal this year. We didn't worry about how everything ended up at the end of the season. We just took each day one day at a time, and we did our best and we took care of our teammates. So even though these guys look cute, they're really fierce on the field and they can execute the game plan.
Okay, Coach.
Yep. Should I read the names? Or?
Absolutely.
Is that
quite all right.
Good deal. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and announce you guys' names real quick. Justin Sorrell, number 4. Jacob Poley, number 7. Robert Dixon, number 8. Caleb Alvery, number 9. Chase Martin, number 12. Paul Teege, number 15. Will Halab, number 16. Jonathan Abarzua, number 20. Luke Anderson, number 22. Ethan Goldberg, number 24. Caden Ceramic, number 32. Adrian Aguiniga, 33. Brolin Hera, 34. Jonah Friedman, 44. Colin McKenna, number 60. Colin McKenna, number 54. And then Connor Myers, number 60. All right. Good deal.
Thank you, Coach. And I'm going to present a commendation to the boys and to the coach, and it commends your achievements in the Titans football team. And the last sentence is that it's because you showed true sportsmanship, determination, discipline, and teamwork. All important things. So congratulations, boys, and congratulations, Coach.
Right, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. We'll go up there and get a picture. How about that? Great to have you. Want to get one this way too, Carl? Oh, that's a great bunch of kids and a great bunch of coaches and a great bunch of teachers. We're very lucky here in Thousand Oaks. All right. Now we're going to move on to public comments. Would you call the public comments for me?
This is the time and place for public comments. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the City Council regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. All remarks should be addressed to the council as a whole, and all documents for City Council and the official record should be presented to the city clerk prior to speaking. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be considered by the council unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city manager for administrative follow-up. 4 people have presented cards, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. As I call your name, come on down. I'm going to call 2 names at once so you can come down and back up the speaker in front of you. First is Dr. Richard Elsley, followed by Debbie Gregory. Hi, Doctor.
Good evening, Mayor Adam, council members, city staff, and Metropolitan Thousand Oaks. My name is Richard Elsley. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks, and it's my pleasure to be here to tell you about the next talk in the Discovery Center's Science Speaker Series. Purpose of the Science Speaker Series is to bring in scientists who can give talks that can explain the fascinating things they're doing in a way that anybody can understand and enjoy. Our next talk, and TOTV, I have a slide here you could put up. Our next talk is 2 days from now, Thursday evening, right here in the Scheer Forum Theater at 7:30 in the evening. The speaker is Giacomo Chiari, who is the recently retired chief scientist of the Getty Conservation Institute. And he's going to talk about how you can use scientific instruments to learn things about ancient artworks that you can't tell by looking at them. For example, you might see a color blue and think, that must be from ancient Greece. But a scientific instrument can say, no, not that blue. That was never used in Greece. That was used in Rome. So he's going to talk about examples of how they've developed scientific instruments to learn more about ancient artworks. That's 7:30 to 9 p.m. here in the Scheer Forum. We have 2 more talks left in the series this spring. In March, we're going to have Dr. Rebecca Johnson from the California Academy of Sciences talk about citizens' science. There are many opportunities where ordinary citizens can help a scientist in doing research, since they don't get very much funding usually anyway. It can be going out and counting animals or doing something on your computer. There are a lot of programs where you can help out scientists. And in April, we're going to have a talk on the 6th great mass extinction of life on Earth, which is the one that's going on now. And that will be by Paul Nargisian from Cal State LA. So if you want more information, go to sciencespeakerseries.org or call 805-905-8168. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Elsley. Our next speaker is Debbie Gregory, followed by Adam Haverstock.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I haven't been here in a long time. I'm a proud resident of Thousand Oaks. I'm also a business owner, and I understand about business. And I'm concerned tonight, and my comments aren't directed at any individuals. They're directed at these concerns, which are community concerns. There was an issue that galvanized this community, and it was about the sign, an LED sign, the first one that this community would ever have. The sign was approved, the design of the sign. However, the sign was tied, actually putting it up to the redevelopment agency, which was dissolved. There were appeals by the Auto Mall to have funding for the project, and those appeals failed. And now, I found out on Friday afternoon that tonight on the agenda is a public hearing to approve a tax zone that would, in effect, make it the establishment of a community facilities district that would pull the trigger so that the sign that went away is now back. And, you know, everybody's entitled to their opinion. However, doing this on a Friday, having a hearing today when this was something that the whole community was upset about just isn't right. It isn't democracy in its best form. It's not why we elected the people on the dais. So I'm hoping that this council will take a step back and have some public meetings with the community, so maybe a compromise can be worked out, where it can be something that the community can live with. I also understand that creating the tax district would mean that we would be giving not redevelopment funds, but $3 million of general funds to the auto mall, and then loaning them another $5 million. I'd like to know and have it in the record if the city attorney and which city attorney has ruled that this is legal, and go on the record. I think that if that's the case, it may not be legal, and perhaps we need to have an audit. Already over $1 million in funds were spent on this project. And we've already given funds, and, you know, do we give it to one business instead of another? What happens if this Melrose zone is built and auto mall dealers sign on to another entity, like the Chinese that are buying up companies, or they don't pay? Have there been studies that we need the parking, recent studies? Have there been studies about, are we making the best interest doing it this way? Let's please take a step back and work together as residents and not put this through, not on an issue this important that galvanizes this community. And in conclusion, we don't have a vote tonight, but we do have a vote where we patronize to get to buy our cars, where we patronize to have them fixed, and who we vote for. And I hear about a boycott being organized. I hope that's not the case. And I've also been asked, and I'd like to put this under the overhead if somebody would show me, a website has been established, saveto.org, about this issue, so that people can get information, saveto.org.
Thank you, Ms. Gregory. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, Adam Haverstock is next, followed by Nick Kidwai. Hello, Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff. And before I give my remarks tonight, I'm just going to give a quick update from the Chamber of Commerce. I did want to thank all the members of the City of Thousand Oaks leadership team who participated in the Leadership Conejo program a few weeks back. I know you're all very busy, and we're very much appreciative you were able to find some time to come and speak to our class. My name is Adam Haverstock. I'm the Director of Government Affairs and Tourism for the Greater Conejo Valley Chamber of Commerce, and we're a professional association of 1,000+ businesses in Thousand Oaks, Westlake Village, and Agora Hills. I wanted to give you a few updates on things happening with your chamber. Some of these you might have heard of, some of these might be new. The first, I think you might have heard at your last meeting, we're having our Chamber's Awards Gala on Friday, February 27th. We've already sold about 250 tickets, and we're going to be honoring, among others, Councilmember Andy Fox as our Man of the Year. So I know we were here last meeting to give you that announcement. We're just reminding everybody. The theme for the event is Fire and Ice. There's going to be a live band, there's going to be dancing, there's going to be some other surprises I'm not going to tell you about tonight. It's going to be at the Four Seasons. It should be a lovely evening, and we hope everyone can make it. Second event I wanted to tell you about is the Principal for a Half Day program, which is a collaboration between the Chamber of Commerce and the Conejo Valley Unified School District. It's a program where members of the community, not necessarily the Chamber of Commerce, volunteer to spend a day in the life of a principal at one of our local schools. We love to have some of our council members volunteer for that program if they're available, maybe some of the city staff. They spend a day with the principal, walking the school site, learning what it's like to be a principal. They have some discussions about current education issues, and then finally there's a luncheon in the afternoon with Superintendent Barstead. So that's going to be in the morning on Tuesday, March 3rd. Starts when school starts around 8 o'clock and finishes at 1 in the afternoon. And more details are available at conejochamber.org. The third announcement is really more for businesses that might be listening to this. Human resource materials are available at the Chamber of Commerce for sale if you need them. These are those fun employment posters you see in the break room at your work that give you all of the required federal and state mandated disclosures. We also have available all of the different pamphlets that are required for sexual harassment, unemployment insurance benefits, work leave, all those different required disclosures. We have those for sale on our website, and they can be picked up at the chamber or mailed to you. And then finally, I wanted to mention a little bit about the Conejo Valley Tourism Improvement District, which is the tourism initiative that this city and Agoura Hills embarked on a little over a year and a half ago. We are up and running, and I've told you a lot about that before. I just wanted to let you know we did an ad buy for the first quarter of 2015, about 5 million impressions that we purchased, digital ad buys that are going to be banner ads, Facebook ads, other social media over the first 3 months of this year. We're very excited to be partnering with a big data company called Quantcast, and we're using a process called lookalike marketing, where we find similar users that might be interested in Conejo Valley and market to them. And I am out of time, so unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Adam. Nick Kidwai, followed by John Fonte.
I begin in the name of God, who is most beneficial, most merciful. My name is Nick Iqbal Kidwai. Last time I checked, still Director of Concerned Citizens, Thousand Oaks, and I'd like to read from June 8, 1993, by Stephanie Simon in the LA Times. And I quote, "Circuit City becomes activists' rallying cry. Development of the electronic store last year, despite residents' protests, is now shorthand for an aesthetic nightmare of perceived government wrongdoing." Come back to February 10th, 2015, no changes. Disgusting. TOTV can show that those signs came up in '93 in response to Circuit City. We have the internet age, we have smartphones, but no changes are made here. We have this, the kids probably laugh when they see this overhead projector. This is from the 50s. That's a picture of the so-called obsolete sign, and on the right there is construction going on. That's not the pyramids. That's what used to be the Buick dealership. And the interesting thing is there's no hearing, no notice, nothing needs to be done about these changes. That's not a jail. That's what used to be the dust from the Buick dealership, and the new dealership will come up. But they could design it so that they could have additional parking for the employees and customers. Well, why do it when it's free? That's the secret calendar of the City Hall. Next week, you know, they are closed every other Friday. I mean, how many people have that? There's no productivity by working longer days. And whenever there's a Monday holiday, I mean, the President's Day is not a day off for working people, but they get Friday off, Saturday off, Sunday off. And guess what? The mayor ran on this platform of saving tax dollars. And look at that beautiful business card. It fooled me and fooled a lot of people. These are not Disney dollars. I hope that the City Council will rise up and do the right thing and not roll over to special interests. If you really need to, in fact, the papers don't cover anything anymore. The redevelopment agency's $7 million was lost due to incompetency of the staff. Incompetency. Simple as that. And I, layman, just a bachelor's degree in business, told them, get the contracts, encumber the funds. They didn't do it. They thought they could get away, and the city lost $7.2 million. Please, for God's sake, change your ways. Change your evil ways, baby. That was a good song.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kidwai. John Fonte, followed by Suzanne Duckett. Hello, Mr. Fonte.
Good evening, John Fonte, Thousand Oaks. If TOTV can go to the exhibit up there. Okay. This mission statement says, "Extraordinary service to the citizens we serve is our purpose." 4 weeks ago, I was in here to complain about city-maintained landscaping along Lynn Road, right by the HOA that I live in, that had degraded significantly. I'm happy to say tonight that the city responded immediately and cleaned up the site and added 750 approximately new plants. So that was good. To others in the city who are watching this tonight, Look around, and if you see deterioration on city-maintained landscaping, you should come here and complain, because it is the only way that you will get satisfaction. You have to go to these guys. I've been complaining about this since last year, and this is what it took. It is not extraordinary service to the citizens we serve. Regarding an agenda item that is coming up later, which is a controversial issue. It's been a controversial issue for 20 years or more. It should have had plenty of public notice. It did not. The agenda item was published on a Friday morning. City staff, and I blame our highest member of city staff, the highest paid city manager in Ventura County, Mr. Mitnick, posting an agenda item on the Automall. Interested parties had no time to gather information or to get organized. I'm sure this was planned, and it was planned to quell the opposition. It was also woefully deficient in completeness. It is not good governance. It is not extraordinary service.
Thank you, Mr. Fonte. Suzanne Duckett is our last speaker.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne Duckett, and I live in Thousand Oaks. Alozina did not pass just by chance at the time that she did. She passed because she is calling us back to the podium at a time when the public is needed to be here to watch over what you guys are doing. And this is not by chance. She's speaking out to us from the grave. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of all of the mom and pops that don't get represented here in the city. When you choose to go after the Automall and give them all of that money, you need to give the mom and pops the same percentage that you're giving the Automall. Absolutely, because they're the ones that are really holding the city down. And you need to go after the current study that tells you that the mom and pops are the people that we, the public, prefer to go to. We prefer to buy from them, as well as having our service done by them. There's a current study. So before you vote on anything tonight, you need to go after that study. There is no way that any kind of vote should go to the Automall before that comes up. It's a national study. I thank you, Alozina, for calling me back to the podium. And I hope that a lot of other people, especially the people of Westlake, who don't want to see the Automall look like Oxnard in their front yard, come to the podium. I don't live in Westlake. So, if Westlake prefers to look like Oxnard, that's up to them. Get them here. Get the North Ranch people here. That would be a good thing. Thank you, Alozina.
Thank you, Ms. Duckett. And that concludes our public comments for this evening. Mr. Mitnick, do you have any follow-up? All right, thank you. Let's move on to the consent calendar. Any items to be pulled? Seeing none, we do have one speaker card. Mr. Nick Kidwai.
Nick Kidwai, Newberry Park, Director Concerned City of Thousand Oaks. For the life of me, I cannot understand how 4 council members can let the city manager pick and choose what to answer what the public had said over here. I mean, this is something that should be just routine. I mean, if there's a question, if it's a rubbish question, just say that it was rubbish or nonsense, but not to have any comments after 4 people, serious Brown Act violations. In fact, one of the basic building blocks of democracy, Mr. Adams, is the minutes. And your minutes do not pass the test. In fact, you yourself, I mean, lost race a couple of times, but came here and spoke eloquently on the residents' concerns. But we cannot look that up because, sure, your name is there, but what you said, it doesn't go in the minutes. So we cannot hold your feet to the fire like the beautiful tax-saving flyer that you sent out to everyone. I mean, that's what minutes are supposed to be. In fact, they are legal documents. That flyer is nothing. It doesn't hold up in court, I think, but the minutes do. And you are constantly in litigation. I don't know. On C, extension of shared revenue with the Thousand Oaks Civic Arts Plaza. This was here before. You folks are just losing it. I mean, this thing has been built for 20 years. It's bleeding. There has been a civil war going on. I mean, Eloise Zena's name was mentioned. The soft opening for this theater, 2 council members didn't even know it existed. And the problem is that was in 1994. This is 2015, 21 years later. Mr. Price was nowhere to be seen at that time. Why don't you folks reach out to the residents of the city and say, we embrace you. We have the same goal. We want to do what's best for the kids that were over here, and come up with a realistic plan to save the Arts Plaza instead of going BK like so many do. I did not get a chance to look at your financial reports this much, but I hope Mr. Adams will respond that COSCA in 2013 had $8 million coming in, and then the following year it went to $1.2 million. That's a huge difference. I know there's a good reason, but I, like many other taxpayers, would like to know it. By the way, we appreciate your having COSCA. And just one last point about it's 240. I won't say that, but you're talking about electricity generating, and the biggest electric plants accounts for the city. And it's great that you have the plant with the solar. But why is there no solar on this? I mean, what's going on? I mean, the best way to put solar is on a parking structure. Why is there no discussion about that? Why don't we save the tax money and have a zero-carbon city? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kidwai. All right, nothing to pull from the consent calendar. Get a motion to approve, please. Mr. Price.
I would make a motion to approve consent calendar items B through F.
All right, motion to approve the consent calendar. Vote, please.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lawrence. All right, we're going to move on to department reports. First up, final report on Thousand Oaks Visioning 2064. And that will be from Rachel Wagner, Assistant to the City Manager. Hello, Ms. Wagner.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Thank you. This evening, I will be presenting the Visioning 2064 final report. I'll just begin with an overview of the program. The Community Visioning 2064 program was launched in April of 2014 as part of the city's 50th anniversary commemoration. The program relied heavily upon public participation, and its goal was to develop a general roadmap with guiding principles for the city through the year 2064, all based on community input. 6 committee meetings were held with 1 wrap-up group session this past December. Participants who were not able to attend these meetings could also participate and provide feedback on an online forum. Each council member served as chairperson of a committee. The report is broken down into sections by each of these committees, and all of the information and results contained in the report was derived directly from the committee's work. Guiding principles served as the backbone for this exercise. Some committees established action items to accompany their guiding principles. There were 86 principles established among all committees. During the final group session in December, the guiding principles were categorized into priority groups A, B, and C by each committee using ranking sheets. All of the committees collectively agreed upon 10 principles to be implemented in the next 5 to 10 years. The data will help staff develop a time frame to accomplish the guiding principles. Here's a look at the 10 priorities to be implemented in the next 5 to 10 years based on the collective voting from all the committees. Also, at the December 6th group session, each committee ranked their individual guiding principles into categories A, B, and C. The majority of each committee's principles fell under priority B to be implemented in the next 10 to 20 years. There was commonality among the guiding principles from all committees. Some common themes across the groups included parks and open space, business and nonprofit organizations, youth and education, housing, and senior services. Now we'll take a look at each committee's principles and their themes. For civic and community, the majority of their principles fell into the senior services category, as you can see in the chart. The economy group's guiding principle themes were closely divided among business infrastructure, fiscal sustainability, business climate, and tourism. Open space-related themes were the most common in the Environment Committee's guiding principles. The Infrastructure Committee's themes were streetscape, housing, transportation, and utilities. Themes in the Municipal Services group were technology, Conejo Recreation and Park District Services, library services, and public safety made up the majority with police and fire. In the end, this visioning exercise not only created a blueprint that the city can use for planning in the next 50 years, but it was one of the most successful initiatives the city has launched in engaging large numbers of the community, many for the first time. The final report is representative of the community's interests and is based on their ideas and input. Current and future city councils can incorporate the findings into their annual goal settings and top priority sessions, along with budget preparations and into their legislative platforms. This concludes my presentation. You can access the final report online at www.torx/2064. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Any questions? Councilmember Bill LaPena.
Thank you, Mayor Adam. Good evening, Mrs. Wagner. Thank you for putting this together. This was almost a year-long effort, actually exactly a year-long effort, and it was not easy. I understand that. I just submitted to the city manager some input that I received from someone who participated in the discussions in my group and has some feedback which I think are very valid and should be incorporated into this. Also, when we conducted the overall guiding principles, my group, which the largest was seniors, they were disappointed not to see more of senior services or senior issues under the guiding principles. As a result, I wanted to see if in guiding principle number 1, support the development of various mentoring relationships between business adults/seniors and youth to develop job skills, life skills, and social development. And I want to make sure that the seniors are included or incorporated a little bit more clearly in these guiding principles, because that was really at least from my group, a big issue. And without reading the email that was sent as feedback from one of the participants, I think we can. I think it's being printed and passed out shortly. We should be looking at the feedback in that particular email, coming from, I think, someone at CRPD.
Okay.
To incorporate that, to make this document more efficient or more practical.
Yeah, this was just presented as what the committees had done, but if there's any additions or revisions, I think it's an evolving document, and I think it will be. So we're not tied to these specific guiding principles. These were just what most felt for the next 5 to 10 years, but you could certainly add in more seniors representation in these top 10.
Thank you. And then the other question, perhaps from Mr. Fox, since you led the environmental category, as I was going over this, and we also brought it up at the last COSCA meeting, I forget when that was, in January, that the CURB initiative, the City Urban Restriction Boundary, as well as the Parks initiative, they both expire in 2030. And I don't see them included in here in the environmental category, and I was wondering whether we could include that. They need to be renewed to protect the open space.
I know that there was an entire evening spent on going over the different city initiatives and current ordinances. Parks Initiative, actually Measure E, SOAR. I believe, is it with Mr. Spurgeon? Maybe it was Mr. Town. I don't know if Mark's here. I'm not going to rely on my memory. Yeah, exactly. But I know we had some discussions. Mark actually, obviously, he put this work together in terms of the priority list. So, Mark, I'm going to kind of defer to you on what was the consensus of the committee on the specific items Ms. Bilda-Pena is talking about, the Parks Initiative, Measure E, and SOAR. I think those were and the other one was guidelines for orderly development and as it relates to, right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. The Environment Group did adopt guiding principles on those topics, and one of them did address Measure E and CURB, and those are in fact all included in the all-inclusive final report. I think what's before you tonight are really just the top 10 that were the result of that Saturday morning session, but the others are all in that report in their entirety.
That's what I thought.
Do address these questions.
Okay.
You can see that on page 8 under priority B.
All right.
I do see the other two. I just did not see the Parks Initiative. I don't know. It says Measure E, Thousand Oaks City Urban Restriction Boundary. That's true. And then the other one that expires is the Parks Initiative. That is also a voter initiative. I did not see that in there.
I'm not opposed to putting it in there. I mean, these are things that we need to deal with down the road.
It's within the
clearly
next,
is a city ordinance. I mean, here's my sense is I just, Mr. Town, I'm going to kind of defer to you. I know we had discussions about are you comfortable with us adding, I know it's already in there, but what I don't want to do is I don't want to start literally adding things to a document that the committee's looked at and they determine, where they should be, and then we had the final meeting. So, but I think this certainly is within the spirit of what the intent was.
Yeah, just to be clear, we definitely talked about the Parks Initiative, and I think it's fair to say that the intent of the Environment Committee was to look at these different initiatives as they came up for sunsetting, Measure E, curbs, and the Parks Initiative. And so while the Parks Initiative is not specifically called out in this particular item, it was, I think, fair to say that the intent of the group was to consider it in the future, frankly, whether it's added here or not, at this time, it would be looked at, and I feel that it's in the spirit of the discussions that we had. We really talked about it at length.
Okay. I have no problem including it. I think it's, as Mr. Town points out, it is in the main document. We spent an entire evening on these things, so I know that it's there. So.
All right, yeah, that's fine then. As long as the intent is there and this is an initiative that actually protects anything that is zoned open space, golf course and open space, and once that expires, that protection goes away, and we don't want that to happen. So obviously staff is aware of that. All right, thank you.
All right. Well, if you, Councilmember Bill LaPena, if you feel that there's something missing, perhaps you would care to add that in a motion when we receive the report.
Yeah, I'll leave that up to Councilmember Fox, since he headed that category.
All right. Well, we have some speaker cards, so let's do that, and then we'll get to that business. We do have 3 speakers. Nick Fotheringham, followed by Nancy Healy.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and City staff. My name is Nick Fotheringham. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks. I was fascinated when I first heard about the Visioning Project, and to that end, I participated in 5 of the 6 committee meetings spread across 3 different committees, and I also contributed several comments through the Mind Mixer when I wasn't able to attend a meeting. And I was looking forward with a great deal of enthusiasm to the final report and where this was going. And I found it a little disappointing in a number of respects. And I'm pleased to hear tonight that this isn't really considered a final report and so forth. It's an evolving document, so that's a bit of relief there. I had a number of specific concerns, one of which is that I was a little confused about why there had to be 2 different documents that were interdependent, a staff report plus the final report. And where I see this interdependence most profoundly is that the staff report mentions 250 plus comments through Mind Mixer and so forth, and these are nowhere acknowledged in the final report. So if you want to understand that those were part of the process, you have to have both reports. I was a little concerned about the graphs, which didn't seem to graph anything that was relevant to city governance. That it made it appear that though there might have been a competition to who could come up with the most number of guidance principles, and I didn't see how that was of any value to you. I counted 181 action steps or action items in the final report, none of which were in the Civic and Community Committee or in the Environment Committee. And this made no sense to me at all about why these 2 committees wouldn't have action steps and the others would. There was no vision statement in the document, and I see those in other visioning documents that I've seen around. There are no recommendations, there's no guidance in there on how the document be used. There are no next steps, like are we going to pick a top 10 of the second tier priority items at some point in the future. And there's some action items that are lacking a verb, so there's still a little sloppiness in the way things are presented in there. And in general, I thought the whole document read a little bit like a rough transcription of some notes from the various committee meetings, and it really needed a little polishing. With that in mind, I'd like to see you send it back to the drawing board and get some of this polishing done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fotheringham. Nancy Healy. Hello, Nancy. Followed by Stephen Foreman.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff. My name is Nancy Healy, and I'm a 26-year resident of the city of Thousand Oaks. I want to thank council member Bill de la Pena before I start for her remarks earlier, which will actually speak to some of the things that I will be saying. Thousand Oaks is by far the best place I have lived in my 71 years, and it is my intention to remain here for as long as possible. Hopefully, I will be able to stay in my home, but if not, I still want to live in this city. I work in several senior organizations throughout the county and am always bragging about what a wonderful place Thousand Oaks is to live for seniors and for all of our residents. I attended the majority of the visioning meetings, and I went to council member Bill de la Pena's meetings, and got a lot out of them. And I was proud that our city even undertook such a giant project just to get input from the citizens. I have read both reports, the shorter one and the longer one, and I was concerned that the first page of the shorter one, and some people don't read past the first page or two, unfortunately, that the top 10 guiding principles make no mention of our large and growing senior community. It was 14.7% in the last census, and it's expected to grow quite a bit by the next one, and that the colored graph that's also right on the first page shows open spaces, parks, businesses, youth, and education far larger than housing and seniors. I worked in a nearby city that lost 2 of its major employers, and I saw what devastating a loss of business can be for a community. I love our parks. I value our open spaces. I'm a mother and a grandmother, and seeing those kids tonight was great. And the youth of our community is extremely critical to the future of not only this city, but the state of California and this country. While all of these areas are extremely important, I really do believe that what makes the city what it is the people who live here. How much they value living here, and how much that many of them are willing to give back to community organizations and our nonprofits because they value living here. My purpose here tonight is simply to ask that in all of our future planning, that our very large senior community and safe housing for all residents be considered at or near the top of the Thousand Oaks priorities. Thank you for consideration.
Thank you, Nancy. Stephen Foreman. Evening, Mr. Foreman.
Council, Mayor, I'm Steve Foreman. I'm a member of COSTAC, and I have a special interest in the Environmental Committee, which I did attend. And I have a question for the council. I don't know if anybody can reply, but we have about over 100 guiding principles and action items. So my question to the council is, what are you going to do with all these? I mean, is this just a kind of a boilerplate for guiding your future decision-making, that you're going to be keeping these principles in the back of your mind through the next decades, several decades, and they guide you in what decisions you make and the things you do and whatever you do here? Or will the council establish a committee that their focus will be to take all of these action items and all these guiding principles and take the top priorities and put them and start to work on real concrete plans, a real roadmap? So that's my question. What are you going to do with all this? Can anybody answer that?
We can have the city manager comment. The city manager can comment to that, Mr. Foreman. Did you have any other remarks you'd like to make?
You're going to respond when I sit down. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I had one other comment about our open space. A question again. And you know, we did talk about Measure E. We talk about the Parks Initiative. We talk about the general plan, all about protecting the open space. So I had a question. Is our open space, the 15 or 20,000 acres in 5 different open space areas, protected against development in perpetuity? Are we solid on this? Are there, I've been reading things about Measure E and some modifications to Measure E and giving developers more building units and this type of thing. But are we rock solid on protecting our open space?
Well, sir, I can tell you that our 15,000 acres of ring of open space around the city is absolutely protected. It's always been one of the highest priorities of this council to do just that, and Measure E would not be relevant to the open space that we've established after all these years. And in fact, the Ring of Open Space was one of the top 10 priorities, that we find a funding source to continue to add to that.
Okay, I'm going to sit down. Thank you for that. And you're going to describe what you're going to do with these guiding principles and action items?
Yes, we will.
If you would try to articulate, maybe I'm a little bit hard of hearing, but I have a little bit problem understanding everything everybody says. So
all right, well, we'll
please
do our
give
best.
it your best effort. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Before we get to that, I just had one quick question for Ms. Wagner. On these top 10 priorities, were they arranged randomly, or are they some sort of an order?
Yeah, they were selected in no particular order.
Okay, a random order. Good. All right. Any other questions? Mr. Fox.
All right, let me just start with, I'll attempt to kind of address some of the speaker comments as well as the deal with staff. As it relates to open space development, Mr. Town, maybe you can just briefly, and I mean briefly, cover what our open space protections are actually before the Parks Initiative, which are significant, what Measure E does or doesn't do as it relates to the open space, a little bit about COSCA, a little bit about deed restriction, just so, these are good questions, and I think folks just don't know the history of the city, and so I think it may be just a very good opportunity, just a very brief education of why our open space is protected in perpetuity, really regardless of whether we have the Parks Initiative or even Measure E.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Our open space is protected at several levels. It's protected at the general plan level. It's protected at the zoning level. And the majority of open space in the city is, in fact, publicly owned by the Conejo Open Space Conservation Agency, whose sole purpose is to protect and manage open space. Land that is set aside is typically zoned open space, and that is really the most strict type of zoning in the city. We have rangers, we have planners that are constantly working with and managing open space, and that is all really apart from Measure E. And Measure E provides additional safeguards, but the general plan designation of existing parks, golf courses, and open space is applied to public open space land. And through this really layered approach, land that's set aside as open space, in my experience with the city over the past 20 plus years, has been protected. It is land that has been set aside. We have not converted it to other uses, and there are no obviously plans to do so. So it's protected. It was protected before Measure E. Measure E provides additional protective measures, but it's frankly in good hands.
So is that good? All right. Just for the general public's view, COSCA is a joint agency between the city and the Conejo Recreation and Park District. So all the open space that you see surrounding the city, it's not city property per se. It's owned by the city and the Park District. And I've said this many times over the last 20 years, it can never be developed. Can never be developed in the sense that folks are talking about houses and all other stuff. So, all right. With respect to Mr. Foreman's questions about what are we going to do, where do we go from here, and after Mr. Fotheringham, same issue. I had these same questions, and so Mr. Mitnick, I think I'm going to turn to you on this. It's my understanding that this visioning process, and it is a general document, and there are many, many action items on there, will be brought up at the next several, and when I say several, maybe the next decade, goal-setting sessions. And at that point, council will start to look at the individual action items, the individual guiding principles in the entire document, and then the council will, based on time, based on revenue, based on all the criteria that we aren't going to necessarily know for the future, then they will start to chip away, so to speak, at the priority items that have been laid out for the committee. Is that essentially, at least at this juncture, what the plan is?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that is correct, and the study session will be on March 24th.
All right. Is it possible that, because I actually thought about a committee myself, but I think the goal-setting process actually is a good first step. But it is foreseeable, or it could happen down the road, that through the goal-setting process, if council really wants to focus on 2 or 3 items within the context of, generally the city sets about 10 goals per cycle, that the council could adopt a committee to focus in on those items, or maybe another citizens committee. But there's other avenues for us to address these things specifically.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that's correct. And for the public's benefit, the city council every year, as the council members indicated, has a goal-setting process. And the way that works, the council has 10 broad goals that cover pretty much all the city departments, and that's for the 2-year budget cycle. And every year, in addition to that, the council adopts 10 top priorities for the year. These would be projects or policies that the council wants to see done and implemented during the fiscal year. And underneath the broad goals and the top priorities, there are a series of objectives, if you will, and there could be 200 to 300 of those. But the matters that are raised in the document here, the visioning document, these will be incorporated as appropriate into the goals and objectives for the next two years. And then the items in here that are more long-term, they'll still be on our list, and they'll appear later in time. But this is not just a report that sits on the shelf. That's not how we do it. In fact, the staff reports that you see on various items, they'll have council goal compliance. So that's how we show how we're implementing council's vision for the organization. And if council needs to, from time to time, there are council committees in which they are able to roll up their sleeves and spend more time dealing with community issues. So I hope that helps provide some clarity.
That's good. Just final comment is it's difficult in the world we live in, where we want almost instant gratification, so to speak. We put work in and we want something back. And I just want to congratulate all the residents and city staff and council for that. At work we call it a tactical pause. We had to kind of step back and look at long term, not get caught up in the day-to-day issues that we deal with. When I say day-to-day, I mean, over the next year or two. This is a visioning process for the next, half a century. And the first group, the short-term goals, if you will, are 5- and 10-year goals. These are not things by design that council was necessarily going to be dealing with this year or next year. And so sometimes it's hard to get your arms around that. But as you read this document and the larger document, it will provide this community a roadmap for important priorities by which future councils, and I would imagine starting with this council, will start to chip away at some of these guiding principles and action plans. The action plans by design, that is a verb. Okay, we are going to take some action on these things. And so it's important that we just recognize that this is, by definition, a long-term visioning process. And I'm extremely proud of everybody, Ms. Bildadapena and her partnership. As I understand it, this is really a first of its kind. The staff was not aware really of any other city in the nation that had taken this type of approach to long-term visioning and this type of community outreach and community participation. So I'm extremely proud of the work everybody did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Bildadapena.
Thank you. Just for Mr. Town, for my own edification, is I've never really asked you the question, or anyone that question, all the open space that is owned by COSCA and the city, we obviously will be protected. Hypothetically speaking, if all of these initiatives which we have in place were to be allowed to expire, which I don't think will happen, but hypothetically speaking, if they were to expire, how would that affect our open space or the zoning under the general plan?
Sorry. Well, with regard to Measure E and open space, the main import of it is that any change from the green category, as we call it, the existing parks, golf courses, and open space category, in the city's general plan to any other category requires a vote of the people. Okay, that's the fundamental principle. And so without that particular aspect of Measure E. Measure E goes beyond. It also addresses commercial acreage and so forth, the changes in that. But then without that, theoretically, the actions that would be necessary, there would still be multiple. Obviously, there would have to be a general plan amendment to change a land use category from that green category to another. That requires public hearings before the Planning Commission, before the City Council. You would also need to change the zoning. That would also require the same actions by the Planning Commission and City Council. And then perhaps more importantly, as I said before, almost all of the open space in Thousand Oaks is publicly owned. So it's owned either by the City of Thousand Oaks, by the Conejo Open Space Conservation Agency, or by the Conejo Recreation and Park District. And I would be extremely surprised if any of those entities as property owners would ever be willing to even remotely consider such an issue. Mm-hmm. And just by the way, in terms of clarity, in your earlier commentary and question, the idea of Measure E as it was articulated in that guiding principle from the environment group that staff worked with Councilmember Fox on, the intent by including Measure E and not specifically including the Parks Initiative was still to cover the same ground vis-a-vis this issue of changing or additional protections for changing land use from this open space green category to any other. So I think as far as that guiding principle is written right now, that covers the purposes of the Parks Initiative as well. That's how it's actually written in our code.
Okay, so it's council's responsibility to make sure that it is put on the ballot once it gets to the expiration date, closer to the expiration date, so it can be approved by voters again?
It would be up to the council in terms of whether the council would want to consider allowing it to expire or extending it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. I just want to thank then Mayor Fox and Councilmember Bill de la Pena for the collaboration that produced the idea to have our visioning process. Excellent idea. And I want to assure Mr. Foreman and the public that these documents do matter, whether it's the general plan or the elements of the general plan or the polling we take once every 2 years or the visioning document that we have now. We do refer to them because we want to be sure our agenda matches your agenda. And that's why these documents are so valuable. And they're valuable, too, because they bring people together. We had 350 people participate in this visioning process. And that in itself was of great value, I believe. So I think, Mr. Fox, if you would want to make a motion
Sure.
and perhaps add a little something.
I just, again, I don't want to be redundant. I just want to thank the citizens of the city. Several hundred participated in a process over 6 months. Then we had over 100 folks very close to the Christmas holidays come out on a Saturday and do one final group meeting to try to put this, and actually that's what put this final document together. And all of these meetings were facilitated and hosted by individual council members. And so just want to thank the council. And again, this was an idea that was a collaboration effort between Ms. Bill de la Pena and myself. And it may not be the most sizzling thing out there, but I can tell you that if we handle this right, that future councils down the road will use this document and access this document in a sense of figuring out what the priorities are for our community. Because I would submit to you, having just did the state of the city after 50 years, our priorities in this community, fundamental priorities, they haven't changed since 1964. In terms of what's important in this community. Obviously, we have changed. Change is critical. You have to stay current and contemporary. Cities that have tried to do nothing have faced severe financial problems. And so this city has stayed contemporary and stayed relevant. At the same time, we protected what is important in Thousand Oaks. So with that, I'm going to move the recommendation to adopt the final report for the 2064 visioning program.
Yes, Ms. Bilda-Pena.
Trying to see through Mr. Mitnick's head. I obviously will support the motion. It's actually been a pleasure doing this in collaboration with Councilmember Fox. It was really very productive, I thought. And with your motion, Mr. Fox, would you be inclined to include suggestions made by the comments that we, suggestions by the speakers who commented on this, as well as the email we received from someone at the Park District? And I don't know, how do you feel about...
I don't know about the email. I'm not going to incorporate something I haven't read.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So-
it has some very good points. But,
All right.
I mean, it's a living document. We
Okay.
can probably improve on it. But I have to say thank you to the city staff for doing this. This was a major undertaking, and I do appreciate all of the time and effort that went into this by really dozens and dozens of employees. And I'm glad, I know you're glad it's over. You're smiling. So also in your motion, would you mind including the initiatives like SOAR or Parks just to...
Yeah.
Would that be okay?
Certainly
All right.
the city needs to review those well before their sunset date.
Okay, that's great. So thank you, Mr. Fox. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, it has.
All right, very good. And I'd like to thank Mr. Price and Miss Jackie Irwin, who's no longer on this board. I almost said no longer with us, but that would be inaccurate. And I'd like to thank myself for participating in this process. It was great. I learned a lot. All right. We do have a motion on the floor. If you would vote, please.
Councilmember Bill De La Pena. Motion carries 4-0.
All right. That is approved. Our next department report will be from Mr. John Prescott, and we're going to talk about concurrent processing for the Oakmont Senior Living and Child Development Incorporated.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. The applicant is planning to build or file an application to build an assisted living facility to be located on the site of the current Youngset Club at the corner of Los Padres Drive and Rolling Oaks Drive, across from the Thousand Oaks Surgical Hospital. The zoning of the property is presently in a residential zone, and the type of use that the applicant wants to propose requires it be placed in the public land zone. So they have filed the zone change from the RE 1 acre on the property now to public lands. They're also asking, and the matter before the council this evening is whether to allow the special use permit and associated applications for the actual site plan and design of the project itself to be processed concurrently with that zone change. Under the code, usually the property must be in the correct zone before that application could be entertained. However, the code does allow the City Council to consider requests for concurrent processing. In this case, staff is recommending you allow the concurrent processing. That would enable both the Planning Commission and the City Council to be able to see the actual development project that's proposed in conjunction with the zoning when it comes before you for future public hearings. If the council decides not to allow concurrent processing, then they would have to process the zone change first, pretty much on its own merits, and then if that were approved, they would later file a special use permit for the use they plan to build. And I believe a representative of the company is here with a speaker card in. That concludes my comments, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Prescott. Questions for Mr. Prescott? Councilmember Bill De La Pena.
Mr. Prescott, I only have one question. We don't receive applications such as this one that combines senior living with child development. Can you explain that a little bit further?
Well, I believe those are just the names of the respective, the applicant is senior development or senior living, and the actual property owner that is a company called Child Development Incorporated, and they're co-applicants in this particular project. But it's a nice fit.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We do have a speaker card. Mr. Bill Mabry. Good evening, Mr. Mabry.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Adam and members of the council. My name is Bill Mabry. I'm one of the principals of Oakmont Senior Living. Our address is 220 Concourse Boulevard in Santa Rosa, California. We've been in the senior living business for the past 25 years, and during that time, we've constructed over 40 assisted living and memory care facilities throughout California. I'm very proud to say that we design, build, own, and operate our own facilities. We've worked closely with the community development and have submitted a full application for our project. After reading the staff report, I can't imagine that there's anything I could add to our request. We did have a neighborhood meeting, which we sent out invitations to the surrounding neighbors to come to a location right across the street from the property. We set up easels, put up renderings, laid out plans. I went to Gelson's for cookies, pastries for everybody to enjoy. And Melanie, our civil engineer, and I waited patiently for our neighbors to arrive. We consumed a lot of cookies. Now I know what it's like to throw a party that no one comes to. I guess in this case, that's probably a good thing. I would like to thank you for considering our request this evening to help speed up our process, and look forward to becoming a part of Thousand Oaks. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have this evening. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Mabry. Question from Councilmember Bill LaPena.
Good evening. Just one quick question. Yes. We have a Young Set on there, the summer camp program, Camp Young Set, I believe it is. So that would go away then with this particular proposal, correct?
That's correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right.
This is replacing the school facility that's there now, and that's where the joint application comes in.
Thanks.
Yes, you're welcome.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mabry.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Prescott, any follow-up to that?
No, sir.
All right, then. So we are obviously not approving the project. We're just approving the concurrent processing of the project. And Mr. Price, would you care to make a motion?
I will. This makes sense. We're moving in the right direction here. We heard from a number of our residents that the seniors were a growing community, and I'm proud to be one of them at this point. And we need more facilities. And I'm excited to hear that memory care is part of this one. So with that, I would move staff recommendation to approve the concurrent processing of the entitlements and the special use permit, I think it is.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Motion to approve the concurrent processing. Vote, please.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. We're going to move on now to our final department report, the Automall Infrastructure Improvement Project, and our Public Works Director, Jay Spurgeon, will give us that. Evening, Mr. Spurgeon.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Assisting me on the dais with this item tonight is our Finance Director, John Adams, as well as Community Development Director, John Prescott. The Automall, of course, is located in the southeast corner of the city between the 101 Freeway and Thousand Oaks Boulevard and Westlake Boulevard. It contains about 54 acres. There's 9 property owners there. It is the #1 tax source. 25% of city sales tax revenue comes from the Thousand Oaks Automall. They employ well over 1,000 staff. And beginning in the 1960s is when the first dealerships were established. That has grown to today. There's, I think, about 27 different dealerships in the Automall. This has been a project in the making for many, many years. I think I became involved in this about 2008. There's been a real partnership that has been established and built over the years between city staff, certainly, and the Automall dealers and owners, as well as city council. The design of this project, and we're talking about the Public Improvements Project, was completed in 2010. We did bid the project previously. Unfortunately, the redevelopment agency, which was slated to fund these improvements, was dissolved by the state. Ultimately, the project was put on hold. All the costs that have been spent during the design phase to date, however, were funded with former redevelopment agency funds. There have been numerous actions on this project over the years. Some of these I've highlighted here. There's an attachment in the staff report that provides even more detail. But the original, one of the original actions, the deposit agreement approved in 2008, was for a 50-50 cost sharing of the project design costs. I think that's important because we're coming full circle back with that kind of partnership arrangement in terms of our recommendations tonight. Preliminary design occurred the following year. There was a municipal code amendment approved in 2010, along with the final design itself. That was vetted. The need for the project was approved, and as well as project design elements at that time. A number of study sessions, public hearings, workshops during 2011 ultimately ended up with an approval of the monument sign, and ultimately, by the end of 2011, the project bids were rejected for the reasons I mentioned earlier. And then in 2012, there was approval to redesign some of the elements of the project just to move forward with that part of it, and that was a result of some value engineering that was done in conjunction with the Automall and the contractor at that time. From my perspective, it's important to understand the context of the project in our community. This is really by many measures, a very successful element of our business community. This is a regional Automall that's very successful. They have made significant investments in their own properties over the years, over $100 million. And I think that's important to understand. These are public infrastructure improvements that are before you tonight for approval. The challenges with those improvements we've discussed over the years, the need for additional parking, the need for pedestrian amendments, for wayfinder signs, new and improved landscaping, et cetera. Obviously, the loss of the redevelopment agency was a significant event. But since that time, and as of November 2013, all of the needed property has been acquired. So that was a hurdle that has been reached. The city, again, and the Automall, for really 2 decades, have been talking about ways to help improve parking and other challenges in the Automall itself. If you do the math, there's about 600 existing parking spaces in the public right-of-way, between maybe 250 and 300 spaces on the private properties themselves for staff and customers. But there's probably at least 1,100, if not more, employees currently in the Automall. If you do the math, there's just not enough parking. And the upgrades for other improvements, and again, the need for wayfinder signage and pedestrian amenities has been documented. Anyone who frequents the Automall during business hours understands there are virtually no parking available on the city streets. Our landscaping that's out there now, a lot of it's old, dying. I mean, it's just reached the end of its life. There's really no theme to the street trees, and many are overgrown and just dying. So this project, the Public Improvements Project, at the heart of it is widening streets so that we can put in 60-degree angled parking spaces. This would give us additional 330 approximately on-street spaces. That's over a 50% increase. Many of the design elements include pedestrian-oriented and pedestrian-friendly concepts. The side streets would be widened about 11 feet in total, and Automall Drive over 25 feet. And this is, you've seen this before, but this is the a snapshot from the plans and shows how The angled parking would be incorporated into a widened street. Note that the planter islands are actually situated primarily at existing driveways, and what that allows us to do is widen the streets without impacting the on-street or the on-site improvements. So we don't have to mess with the grades at driveways and stuff, and it really simplifies the project itself. This is a neat design at the intersection of the side streets with Automall Drive. There's kind of a rotunda type improvement where there'll be some offsetting pavement materials in the intersection itself. In fact, the intersection would be raised slightly, and that would be another traffic calming feature. There's a kind of a rounded sidewalk. Transplanted oaks would be placed at this location, as well as some pedestrian amenities like benches and also some nice retaining wall features along the freeway. The landscape concept, ultimately there's an increase of about 41 trees over what's existing there with the new project. And the shrubs and ground cover, flowering type plants, water friendly would be added throughout the Automall itself, with street trees that are now themed. And liquid ambers has been selected as the theme for Automall Drive, and crepe myrtles, Chinese pistache for the side streets. This is one of the existing healthy oaks that would be transplanted to one of those rotundas. Wayfinder signs is something that I think is a neat feature of this project, starting with signage along Thousand Oaks Boulevard that helps direct people down the right street depending on which dealership they want to go to, as well as some smaller wayfinding signs, maybe on poles. This is a conceptual design at this point, but these would be sprinkled throughout the remaining streets in the Automall itself. There's been about a little over 1.4 million spent to date on the project. This covers all the design phases as well as acquisition of several properties along Automall Drive needed for the project. We have construction estimates, contingency, and other allowances, including formation of a community facilities district. So our total project estimate at this point is $9.9 million. Moving ahead with a bidding phase and starting to work on a community facilities district formation would occur through summer this year, and then award of a construction contract and beginning of construction later this year. Because the project construction, there's a need for phasing. Obviously, we can't take out all the streets at once. We have to maintain access to all the dealerships during construction. Does require a little bit longer construction period than the project would require if it were just in kind of virgin area. So we're looking at 14 or more months for construction.
So, good evening, City Council. I'm going to give a brief update on the funding of the project. So, as mentioned, this would be a partnership between the city and the Automall. 50% would be paid by the city and 50% by the Automall. The Automall will be potentially using a community facilities district. And just to talk a little about a community facilities district, the authority to use a community facilities district is authorized by the Mello-Roos Community Facilities Act of 1982. It allows property owners to form a district and to finance certain public improvements. And I think that's important. We're talking about public improvements that at the end of the project will be owned by the city. The district uses tax-exempt financing for these improvements, and that will be through the issuance of bonds, tax-exempt bonds, or through a loan. The city, based on that, will levy a special tax on the district that will be paid annually to pay for that debt. The structure on a CFD is usually between 20 and 30 years. And there's many ways to fund it. One typical way would be a loan agreement between an agency and the CFD or the Community Facilities District. Other ways would be to use tax-exempt bonds, which can either be through the open market, which we call a public offering, or from a private placement. A private placement could be with an agency like the city or could be with an individual investor. The financing concept that the city would look at would be a loan between, would either be a loan between the city and the Community Facilities District, or the city would buy the tax-exempt bonds from the CFD and would put that in its city's treasury. From the city's perspective, based on the size of the bond, that doing a private placement or for the city to buy the bonds would provide some efficiencies and cost savings. Those cost savings would be recognized by the Community Facilities District over the term of the bond. Why would the city, as far as considering doing this option, a couple key points. One, the favorable value, the assessed value. Remember, this is going to be a priority lien on the property at the Auto Mall or through the district. The current value, at least the assessed value, is $142 million, and then the lien is the $5 million. So a 29-to-1 lien value to lien ratio. The other thing, and just mention it, it is a priority lien on the property, and the security is the property and the improvements. The other aspect is annually those special taxes would be paid through their property tax bill, and thus that's the funding that's coming in to pay the debt. And in the case that a dealer or a property owner does not pay for their property taxes, the Melrose District Act allows for the district to foreclose on those properties. Again, security is the land. So at this point, the project is ready to be bid. The process of going forward, and we're leveraging both the private funding from the Auto Mall and the city funding to do these important public improvements. And so tonight's recommendation is to authorize staff to solicit bids and to approve in concept the public and private partnership between the city and the Auto Mall for these public improvements. And then staff's available for any questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Spurgeon. Mr. Adams, questions? Councilmember Bill LaPena.
Good evening, Mr. Adams. When would it be decided what the percentage would be, the loan rate?
Well, at the point in which the city would come back with the formation of the CFD, it would talk about the actual structure of that, of the financing. Remember, right now, when we showed you the schedule earlier about the formation, that information as far as the terms would come back to the City Council within the next 3 to 4 months before we award the bid contract.
Before we heard anywhere from 1% to 2%. Is that still being considered?
I think that was not accurate. If you remember, the discussion back was tied to a treasury. The 1%, I'm not sure where the 1% came from. Currently, based on the current market, rates go from anywhere from 2.5% to 4.5% currently. So I'm not sure where 1 or 2% is coming from.
All right. Any other questions? Let me ask you, what is the current return on our portfolio right now?
The current return, I believe the December return was just over 1%, 1.08%.
Mm-hmm.
It's been, I mean, you certainly know what the market is as far as where rates are, and the city is just around 1%. So this would be, again, this is a little bit, you look at our average investment, certainly it's not above 5 years, but certainly well above, if we did a loan, would certainly be above the current rate of return that we're earning on our portfolio.
Mm-hmm. Higher than the 1% we're receiving now.
Several hundred basis points, I would assume.
All right. And the $1.4 million that's been expended by the city so far on this project, that occurred when we thought we had the redevelopment funds. Am I correct?
Correct, and it started back at the design phase. So that 1.4 has been spent over multiple years as we were planning to move forward with the redevelopment agency funding.
Mm-hmm. But alas, we lost the redevelopment funds and the 1.4 has been expended, but we still, if this project were to go through, we'd still get the benefit of that 1.4, would we not? All the money expended is
For land,
still applicable to the project.
correct. It was for land and design. So yeah, all of that went to the project and is part of that $9.9 million.
And conversely, if it wasn't, the money's gone.
Correct.
All right. Any other questions?
Your mic wasn't on.
No, we won't do that. All right. It's a little... All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have 19 speaker cards, so that's quite a bit. We'll get 3 minutes each, and I would ask, please, as I call your name, the first speaker come to the podium, obviously. The second speaker come on down to the front row, so you're ready to come to the podium, and so we'll keep everything moving along. First speaker, Chase Rashid, followed by Patricia Booker. Evening, Mr. Rashid.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Let's get my speech here. I rise in opposition to this proposal. While it is undeniable that the Auto Mall has provided vital and irreplaceable economic activity to our city, that contribution does not justify opening up our city's coffers as a source of lending, nor does it justify approving an oversized digital sign that goes against local standards. Instead of common sense and financial discipline, what we have here before us is a goodie bag giveaway that is a treat for the Auto Mall, but a trick for taxpayers. In 2012, the Auto Mall Association president stated that the association couldn't afford the upgrades and that they should not have to pay for the upgrades because they are on city property. And while that is true, the upgrades that are being sought for the benefit of the Auto Mall's bottom line. Now, if you read the proposal, you will see that the Auto Mall spent over $100 million doing various improvements over 15 years, some of which were cosmetic. Now, if you go down the boulevard, you'll see those upgrades that are cosmetic, particularly at Kemp Ford, and I'm wondering why they didn't put some of that money toward some of these logistical needs. You have to put logistics before cosmetics. It's like sometimes people don't want to spend their money on what they need. They want to spend it on the flash and the glitz and the glamour. It's like a college student spending all his money on the new iPhone, but then asking his parents to buy him groceries. And onto that Auto Mall sign, it caused an uproar. Many people came down here to speak against it. And I don't think we need to open that up again, but it's obviously been opened up again because this is giving an automatic approval to that sign. There's no need for that sign. Everybody knows there is an Auto Mall in Thousand Oaks. They can see it, and even Mr. Magoo, driving without his glasses in the dark, could see that there's an Auto Mall there. So I respectfully urge a no vote. Don't be bought by the Auto Mall. Some people are masters at selling, some are masters at buying, and the Auto Mall may prove to be masters at both if you approve this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rashid. Patricia Booker, followed by Jill Lederer.
Hello, Mayor and council members and all
Hello.
the rest. My name is Patricia Booker. My son just spoke. I don't want to go after him, but oh well. My name is Patricia Booker. I've been a 15-year resident of Thousand Oaks. It will be 16 years in June. I was a reluctant resident at first to move to Thousand Oaks. I lived in Santa Barbara, but circumstances, we had to move. I didn't want to move. I stayed in Santa Barbara as long as I could, but my son, he moved with his grandmother. So I was forced to move here, and I found out after I was here, even though I would visit from time to time because I had relatives that lived here. It was a nice place to visit, but when I moved here, I figured out that Thousand Oaks, it was good for my personality. I suffer from social anxiety, Thousand Oaks gave me a calm. The parents of Thousand Oaks gave me a calm. It's a quaint little city. And I usually don't get involved in this stuff, but my son said, you need to speak up. And when he showed me the sign, the automobile sign they want to put up, it was like when we would take road trips when I was a wee one, my dad, it was like the road trip signs that you'd see, like Stuckey's, 3 miles, big signs. Yeah, they're fun when you're a child, but they're really they don't have any class to them. And I talked to Thousand Oak residents. I have friends. They've grown up here. They're in their 30s. They were born and raised here. Some are older. They've raised their children here. They don't come out and speak because their attitude is que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. They think that their voices won't be heard, but their voices need to be heard. And I'm speaking out for those people as well. There's alternatives to the whole automobile, the parking. Why not negotiate with the malls and get a shuttle that brings people park at the mall, the shuttle brings them to the auto mall. It doesn't have to be the way. Thousand Oaks has a personality, just like Oxnard and all the other cities in Ventura County have their personalities. Don't mimic the personality of another city. That South needs to be what it is. It's quaint and nice. Should stay that way. So search your heart and souls. Don't fall prey to groupthink. Each and every one of you should search your heart and souls before you make this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Booker. Jill Lederer, followed by Norman Hoffman. Good evening, Ms. Lederer.
Good evening, Mayor Adam, council members and staff. Jill Lederer, CEO, Greater Conejo Valley Chamber of Commerce, 600 Hampshire Road, Thousand Oaks. On behalf of your chamber, I'm here tonight to support the staff recommendation to approve a public-private funding partnership between the City of Thousand Oaks and the Thousand Oaks Auto Mall. In our view, the improvement of the Auto Mall is one that will benefit every resident and business in the community for generations to come. The long-standing productive relationship between the city and the Auto Mall, not to mention the entire business community, provides a strong foundation to move forward with this much-needed project. As you well know, but it bears repeating for those who may not, our 24 Auto Mall dealerships account for approximately 25% of all city sales tax, not to mention that most important component of economic development, jobs. The Auto Mall owners are local business people. Most of the dealerships are still family-owned after almost 50 years. We all know the names because they are the families that are our neighbors, serve on our boards, support our schools. Shaver, Ladin, Anderson, Nefton, to name a few. These people share our premier city's commitment to providing and enhancing essential infrastructure in a way that sustains a modern and healthy business community. We thank you, our amazing city, for being second to none in recognizing the opportunities that have kept us great. This is one all parties have worked for, and we have great confidence in the execution of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lederer. Norman Hoffman, followed by Debbie Gregory.
Good evening, Your Honor.
Mr. Hoffman.
Mayor Adams, council members. I've been counsel for the Thousand Oaks Auto Mall since its formation, and there are many dealers here tonight who will be addressing specific points on the project. But I did want to respond to a couple comments made earlier tonight by speakers. First of all, I think one lady pointed out that she thought the Auto Mall sign, which is not on the agenda tonight, would be the first LED sign in the city of Thousand Oaks. I think that is not correct. If I understand, the city itself has LED signs throughout the city advertising the Thousand Oaks Theater, and there are many other LED signs and light bulbs throughout the city. Also, as the chamber just represented, the dealerships in Thousand Oaks are not corporate chain dealerships. They all are, quote, mom and pops. Rather, they're large. But the families such as the Ladins, the Shavers, the Kemps, Leftons, Rusnacks, Andersons, all are here tonight and will be addressing you. I think Councilman Fox mentioned the city must get current and contemporary if it's going to survive. And I think represent Automall dealerships and Automall malls throughout the city and Southern California. And I know the Riverside Automall upgraded itself, much like is contemplated to be done here. And the dealers experienced a good 5 to 10% sales as a result of the beautification, public improvement changes made there. And so I urge the council to support a project that would go forward and bring us into more contemporary current image and efficiency for an Automall. I'll yield the rest of my time to other dealers who are here tonight.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hoffman. I've been remiss here. Please state your name and city of residence. And we have Debbie Gregory.
Thank you. I'm Debbie Gregory, a proud resident of Thousand Oaks, and thank you for that, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
The design of the sign that was approved, that never happened, that was one of the most controversial issues in the city, will be triggered by the establishment of the Community Facilities District that you have on here tonight. We, the residents, learned about it on Friday. So if you go ahead and approve it, it will be your legacy, whoever votes for it. When people pass that sign and are annoyed by it and say, hey, this is horrible, this isn't why I moved to Thousand Oaks to have neon LED signs, they're going to remember that Al Adam or Joel Price or Annie Fox gave it to them. I'm asking for a timeout. Let the residents be heard. You were voted to represent the residents. It doesn't need to be approved today. Also, I want to go on the record and formally request the city manager to please notify me who, representing the city legally, has signed off on giving $3 million of our general fund to the Automall and loaning them another $5 million. Because I'm going to ask the state for an audit if this goes through, and so are other people. We're very concerned. We'd like to work with you, but not for a few days' notice. Also, I still have some time, good. We need current studies on the parking, on the feasibility of the return on our investment, how long it's going to take. Not just putting it through today and handing over a check. We've already handed over $1 million to the Automall. The meetings that we had city staff that was funded by the city. Mr. Adam himself told me we spent that money. Should we not spend any other money? I think that we need to take a breath, get public input. This is the most controversial issue in the city. And to ram it through is wrong. Also, the residents might not have a vote, but we do vote where we buy our cars, where we have them fixed. There's a lot of good people that work at the Automall, and it's a shame if there's a boycott. And people are upset, and that's what they're talking about. Maybe instead of that, we can work together and find a compromise that everybody can live with. Again, I'd like to, I've been asked to ask residents that are concerned and people that want information who just feel like they learned about this tonight to go to saveto.org. There's an email address there, I understand. You can contact people. And also, one other thing I wanted to bring up. A few years ago, yellow ribbons were tied on trees because a mother lost her son. The city council said, no, you can't do that. National media attention got on it. Well, at the end of the day, the city council members were tying yellow ribbons. This issue has the potential for national media attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gregory. John Dockin, followed by Alan Hopkins.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. Mitnick. My name is John Dockin, and I've been a proud resident of Thousand Oaks for the past 28 years. And I would just like to add my voice in support for the proposed agreement on the parking situation at the Automall. Over the past 3 decades, it's been a truly wonderful experience for my family and I to see firsthand how the residents of Thousand Oaks and the city staff and its elected leaders, and yes, various special interest groups, have all come together time and time again, often after vigorous debate, to provide the very best for this city and all of its residents. Council members, I would respectfully submit that the current parking situation at the Auto Mall is not the very best that this city can offer. Unfortunately, parking at the Auto Mall ranges from simply difficult to completely impossible. As we all know, the Auto Mall, as we've heard, provides 1/4 of the total sales tax revenue that the city receives. Some years it's even a little more than that. 25 cents of every dollar is provided by the Auto Mall. In addition, as we all know, the mall and its various dealers and businesses are always among the very first to support the numerous community events, sports activities, and nonprofit organizations here in town. Now, it would be easy for me to go on citing additional examples of the positive impact the Auto Mall has in Thousand Oaks, but we have a number of speakers, and in the interest of time, I would simply conclude by saying that for all of these reasons, coupled with the fact that it is simply in the best long-term financial and community interests of this city, that we should be making it as easy as possible for people to do business with the Auto Mall and not, pardon the pun, driving them away simply because they could not find a place to park. I urge you to approve the authorization of construction bids and to approve in concept this partnership with the Auto Mall. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Dockin. Alan Hopkins, followed by Susan Murata. Alan Hopkins is not here. So, Susan Murata.
Thank you, Mayor Adams. Council members, staff, it's a pleasure to be here once again and to continue trying to come up with a solution for the atrocious traffic and parking situation at the Thousand Oaks Auto Mall. When the state dissolved the redevelopment agencies in California and those funds were taken away from our project, we were devastated because we quite frankly do not have a contingency plan. So we truly thank you for continuing to keep this project alive. I think everybody needs to remember, and it's been said several times, but these are public improvements. These are street improvements in a neighborhood just like any other neighborhood in Thousand Oaks. The Thousand Oaks Auto Mall dealers are residents of Thousand Oaks just like any other resident. The Thousand Oaks Auto Mall dealers pay property taxes just like other residents, with the caveat that combined it's hundreds of thousands of dollars in property taxes each and every year. They also pay tens of thousands of dollars in business license fees. Not only do they pay taxes and fees, they generate millions of dollars year in and year out for the city's budget. And as has been mentioned, they employ over 1,000 employees. Many of those people are Thousand Oaks residents. And they support dozens of charities, schools, and community needs each and every year. Funding this project has nothing to do with special interests or big business. It's about funding public improvements that I think we can all agree are long overdue and very much needed. These streets were designed for traffic over 50 years ago. This project not only provides the much needed parking spaces, but it provides traffic calming elements that make it safer for pedestrians. It also has the wayfinder signs, which makes it easier and safer to navigate around the Auto Mall. And why is the Auto Mall project different than any other street project? When you started the Herbs Road project, did you go door to door in that neighborhood and tell people, hey, we're getting ready to widen the street, we're going to bring it up to current traffic conditions, we're going to put in sidewalks to make it safer for pedestrians, and guess what? Get out your checkbook because you have to pay for 50% of it. No, that didn't happen. If you want this project to be fair and equitable, you should be paying for 100% of it. It's street improvements. It's public improvements. We've been working on this for years. And the dealers are good business people that have spent millions of dollars improving their facilities and the flow in their facilities. But without this infrastructure improvement, it's for nothing. And if the only way we can get these improvements made is to pay for part of it, then we're willing to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Murata. Thank you very much. John Anderson. John Anderson, followed by Gary Raymond.
Mr. Mayor, City Councilman, staff members, it's great to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I was happy when I looked at the agenda tonight that you had your mission statement written there for the City Council. It says, extraordinary service to the citizens we serve is our purpose. I just wanted to share with you that most of the auto dealers here in Thousand Oaks have the same purpose as the City Council. We strive to give extraordinary service to our customers. We strive to be extraordinary employers, and we strive to be extraordinary corporate citizens. We are great businesses that strive to give outstanding service to our customers, that treat our employees well with great compensation and benefits, and we support, as you've heard before from others, numerous community and charitable organizations. We have a great fondness for this community, as you do, and we are great partners with the City of Thousand Oaks. The automobile business is more challenging than ever. Our margins on new cars have eroded greatly. They're very slim because everyone knows you can go on the internet and find out what we paid for the cars that we're trying to sell. And so it's very difficult to make a profit on our new car sales these days. So we try to make it in other areas, and we have to be very mindful of our expenses. The business is also very competitive. There are many auto malls to the north of us, to the east of us, and to the south of us that are trying to eat our lunch every day. And many of those auto malls are in cities and towns that greatly support the auto malls and do everything that they can do to help those auto malls be successful. The Rusnick, Ladden, Shaver, Lappin, Kemp, Nefton, O'Gara, and Anderson families have invested not $100 million, but hundreds of millions of dollars over the years in new showrooms, expanded service facilities, and additional parking structures. These investments are funded 100% by the family-owned businesses. What we are asking the City of Thousand Oaks to do is to upgrade the infrastructure of the streets and the parking areas in the auto mall. We're talking about upgrading public property, as other folks have pointed out. We, the dealers here in the auto mall, are willing to pay 50% of the cost of these improvements, even though we don't own the land. We think this is a very generous offer and a very good deal for all involved. Improving and beautifying the streets and increasing the parking by over 330 parking spots will improve our customers' shopping experience, will make us more competitive as an auto mall, will help grow sales, increase revenues to the city, and with the increased revenues to the city, continue to preserve the specialness of this great city of Thousand Oaks.
I have to thank you for that, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate your comments.
Just a couple
you.
more comments, but thank you very much.
All right, sir. Gary Raymond, followed by Nick Kidwai.
Is it possible to have this?
Yeah, let me get that on.
Oh.
Gary Raymond. Gary Raymond.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Gary Raymond, 34-year resident of Thousand Oaks. I'll try to get through this quickly. I'm opposed to the Community Facility District. I'm opposed to a gift of money to the Auto Mall from the city treasury. There are many other things we should be spending on, let alone giving money to a business group. I'm opposed to a submarket interest loan. This is another issue that came up. I don't know why the city's only getting 1%. You can get 4% right now on government FDIC insured CDs, 4%. So I don't know what's going on. So that's a whole other issue. But we shouldn't be doing a subprime loan at any rate. Susan brought up an interesting point about improvements for businesses the city needs to do. I don't agree with that. If you have an apartment building that you're building, you have to provide adequate parking, either subterranean or on the space for the apartment building. You do not go to the city and ask them to widen streets and add a lot more parking as a general rule. Why the Auto Mall should get special treatment, I don't understand. I'm opposed to a new large sign. We fought this battle. It's going to be an eyesore. Another issue which no one's mentioned is basically we've had mission creep here. We don't have this larger sign, which hopefully we don't get, but what we do have is a lot of huge white buildings along Teal Boulevard. If you look at the general majority of buildings that exist in Thousand Oaks, commercial buildings, they are earth tones. They are neutral. They're integrated into the landscape in the area, and it helps keep the beauty of the city where it is. What we have now is this huge eyesore. So we basically are becoming the Oxnard Auto Mall, and it's a detriment to the city. And I think basically the Auto Mall dealers think if they can't get a big sign, they'll just make big buildings and put, big company names on the side of them. So this is something that wasn't addressed, and it's kind of slid through, but it's definitely an eyesore. It's degraded the aesthetics of Thousand Oaks. Anyone who's watching this, who's interested, who's lives in the community, who's interested, I would suggest they contact the website saveto.org and network through that. The other thing is that we're talking about adding 300 parking spaces. If there's 20 dealerships, that's about 15 spaces per dealership. You mean to tell me you can't find space on these big parking lots that exist at the dealerships for 15 cars? Basically, I support 4 dealerships with my personal vehicles. Right now, I'm very loyal to this area, but if this goes through, I think a boycott is in order. Thank you very much. I hope you do the right thing.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Raymond. Nick Kidwai, followed by Robert Hodson.
Nick Kidwai, resident of Newbury Park, Director concerned citizens Thousand Oaks. First of all, Mayor, it has been brought to your attention that this hearing is a clear violation of the state's open meeting law, the Brown Act, because the information about the sign was, at least that sign portion for sure, was not, it was incorrectly said available on Friday, but it only was available at 4 p.m. today. It's in the city's political green packet, and hardly anybody knows about it and reads it. So if you don't do it, I and other people are going to file with the DA as well as the grand jury. And it's simple. I mean, that's follow the rule of the land and postpone that part for 2 weeks. Why? I don't know if TOTV showed that. That's the new Lexus dealership has been built. Is being built right now. That's the remnants of the GMC dealership, I believe, and Silver Star, Mercedes, I believe. Why is it that this is being done? I asked already before. Hopefully, Mr. Prescott will reply that such major projects can be done without a public hearing. no input. And Rajnak was involved in the change. I was there. I supported them. And there was a whole lot of people that did not agree with that. I would like to say that I wanted to add to my home and build a room. And the fees would be around $2,500. And it costs about $25,000 more to build in this city versus other cities. So I say I'm willing to shed the concerned citizen badge and turn it in. I too would be happy to join the gravy train of the special interests if I can get a rebate on some of the sales tax that I have generated. I figured I've sold $3 million in 30 years and directly, and I contributed to about $300 million at Home Depot in paint sales. So I'll be willing to accept and negotiate with the city manager about 0.5% or 0.25% if that could be returned. I've given $100,000 in property taxes. Of that, city got $6,000. So maybe that would be enough to get rid of the Mr. Joel Price, get rid of the fees for the room addition. You were quoted in the Daily News that you're a tightwad and you will not spend any money for the taxpayers. Well, this is your chance to prove it, that you will not, that you will be a tightwad and not give special interest, special treatment. They say this is they are contributing 25%. What about the 75%? That's why I say give some money to me. In fact, Zena has been mentioned. Zena had come out with a figure that the small businesses on Teo Boulevard pay more sales tax than the Auto Mall. What about the Oaks Mall? How about doing something for them? I mean, this is endless. It is ridiculous, and sales tax is only a small part of the budget. You have a $200 million budget. So we do not want to boycott. Please, let's have a compromise. Please postpone at least the Auto Mall sign part. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kidwai. Robert Hodson, followed by Rick Limo. Evening, Mr. Hodson.
I'm Bob Hodson. I'm a Thousand Oaks resident now for 38 years. I rose to speak on this topic when I was a resident for only 35 years. In the following 3 years, I thought this issue had sort of died when the unaffordable bids came in and we lost the redevelopment agency funding, and so the sort of thing kind of went away. But now we've got all this new money, so Phoenix arises. So I object to Proposition 9, or the Agenda Item 9C, on the grounds that it is simply not the city's job to provide parking to customers or employees. It is simply not the city's job. If it was the city's job, it should be applied, must be applied broadly. The city doesn't own the Ralph's grocery store parking lot, doesn't own the CVS parking lot. Conejo Valley Vet Clinic owns their own parking lot. The city doesn't provide that. Those companies, those stores, those businesses provide parking for their customers and their employees on their own dime. The Auto Mall lot do the same, notwithstanding all the wonderful amount of money they bring to the city through their sales tax revenues and business licenses, and the contribution to the Little League teams and all those great and wonderful things. Same arguments we had 3 years ago or 4 years ago when we were discussing this before. That percentage of the city sales tax is the same today as it was back then. And there may be some issues with the landscaping that ought to be fixed. Well, I think that is the city's responsibility, and the city should do that. If the city doesn't do it, then the city's but not living up to the responsibility. But it is not the city's responsibility to pay for parking. But separate from 9C, I object and I request to separate the Auto Mall sign from the overall CFD, the whole issue, on the grounds that when this topic was brought up 3 years ago, the Auto Mall was saying, hey, we put 28% or 25%, then they call themselves 28%, of the city's sales tax revenue, and our revenue has dropped off dramatically, and we need to put this sign to generate sales. Well, guess what? Did you read the article in the paper in December of 2014, that 2014 was a great year? So the sales went down when the economy went down. Sales came back up when the economy came up. Same 1,000 jobs are discussed in the on the benefits of having the Auto Mall, the same Little League teams, all those things there. And then secondly on that topic, that big old sign on 101 is simply not in keeping with the city general plan for the 101 corridor. It's just the biggest thing in the whole city, and my time is up, and I made my 3 points, and thanks for your indulgence.
Thank you, Mr. Hodson. Rick Lemo, followed by Chris Shaver.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and City staff. First of all, as current chair of the Chamber of Commerce, I want to enthusiastically support the message of support from our President and CEO that was voiced earlier this evening. I want to talk about something a little bit different than the Auto Mall or the Auto Mall sign tonight. Some things that I think are a lot more important. First, I'd like to remind you that I do have some significant insight in redevelopment. I've been involved in 3 different cities with 3 different redevelopment projects. The loss of the redevelopment agency does not mean that the loss that we've suffered a loss for the need to improve our redevelopment, whether it be city infrastructure or the like. Everyone wants to speak to our wonderful quality of life, and I thank you guys for that, or I blame you guys for our wonderful quality of life. But nothing speaks to quality of life as loudly as money for city services, and 25 cents out of every dollar in our general fund budget that has a direct impact on city services and quality of life comes from sales tax revenue generated through the Auto Mall. But I said I didn't want to mention just the Auto Mall, so I want to talk about something else. There's a message that you're sending to the businesses of our community tonight. It's a loud and clear message that either we can trust decisions that were made by previous city councils, or every time council changes, we can trust that the decision and the word given by a previous council doesn't count. And unfortunately, I can speak directly to that because it happened to me and the company I work for. We had the lakes approved in a beautiful project. Council changed, and we reevaluated that decision, and we're still fixing that. I work very closely with all of you trying to fix that and make it a little bit better. I think we have to remember that business is investing a lot in this city, just as you are investing your time and hopefully some of the city's money. The rhetoric goes away with your vote. So we know whether you're going to stand behind those enthusiastic words that we want to be a council that works with business. That goes away if your vote doesn't back up the rhetoric. It's really important that we certainly don't ever give the keys to the city to business. That's not what I'm suggesting. But I'm nearly a 30-year resident, and we hold business to an unreal standard that no other citizen gets held to. And I'm not suggesting you change that. But if we make a commitment, either with a council vote, as we have with some of these issues before. Remember, time is never on our side. The last time we took too much time, we had a recession, we had a governor that wiped out the redevelopment agency, and we're living with that now. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Lemo. Chris Shaver, followed by Christine, I beg your pardon, Patton.
Hello, my name is Chris Shaver, and I've been a resident of Thousand Oaks for 25 years this year. I'd like to thank the City Council for considering this parking project. I'd like to thank the city staff for all the time, energy, and effort that they put in to make this solution discussable. I don't think that's a word, but and I wanted to talk about 3 things. There's a need, there's a benefit, and there's a solution. I'm sure all of you have been down to the Auto Mall during business hours. It's very obvious, painfully, that there's a parking problem. Transports come, they try to drop off new cars off the transport trucks. Cars go by side, it's very dangerous. These streets were built, excuse me, as people have said, in the 60s, when the traffic volume was not nearly what it is today, not to mention the business levels. So there's definitely a need. Our customers, when they pull up, there's definitely the Hiawatha effect. You look and you see there's no parking, and they drive away. We've seen it several times. So there's definitely a need for that. There's also a benefit for this proposed solution, and that benefit is people have talked about sales tax and the increase. It's been debated whether it's 25 or 28. Whatever it is, if this parking project is approved, we want to get that number higher. We want to be more successful to generate more sales taxes for the city. But we also like to continue to do what we do, be involved with the organizations, the schools, and all that stuff. And that's only made possible through the residents of Thousand Oaks and the people that come to Thousand Oaks to buy the cars from us and service their cars. So there's definitely benefits to the city. There's also benefits to employees. The more successful we are, the more we sell, the more employees that we can have and add to the rosters. We have about 1,000 right now, and we'd like to grow that number as well. And as far as the solution goes, I'm looking at the timelines. My father was the original member. His name was Pete Shaver, and he was a parking committee member. This was in 1995. We have bantered above ground, below ground parking. We have talked about shuttles. We've talked about trolleys. We've talked about almost everything you could possibly imagine. And we finally came up with what is a very expensive solution for us and for the city, but it's something that after many, many attempts at coming up with a solution, this is a viable solution. We've been working on it very long, as you have too. If not now, with this solution, when? It's been 20 years. If we don't take action now, it's probably not going to happen. And you talk about decreasing percentage of sales tax. We can wait and be congested and watch our sales and our percentage of the city operating budget go down and down and down, but we have a viable solution, and I urge you, please, unanimously approve this. It sends a message to the community, and we need this. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shaver. Christine Patton, followed by Suzanne Duckett.
Oh, please forgive me, I wasn't planning on speaking tonight. I am Christine Patton. I'm from Camarillo, but I work at the Auto Mall. I'm just a service cashier, but I've had the pleasure of working for 2 of the Silver Star dealerships in the last 5 years. And anybody who's worked for them for any length of time knows that our motto is do the right thing. And customers come from not only all over Thousand Oaks and Westlake, but hundreds of miles away even. We have people bring their cars in because of our fairness and our excellent customer service. We send out customer surveys. I get to read a lot of them. And we don't have a lot of complaints, but the one we do that is in common with even our very satisfied customers is the parking situation. And one of the customers that I was able to help out with their service cashiering told me that they almost drove away from buying a vehicle at our dealership, but somebody waved them down to tell them that there was parking on the lot. And that's why they bought their car here, and then they said they had such a great time with us that's why they serviced their car with us. And how many more people did we not flag down? It's near impossible for us employees to find parking after 7:30 in the morning. I've had to park in an adjacent shopping center a couple of times. So how do we expect the customers to find them? The other thing is, I would love to visit some mom and pop restaurants around the area. I am a big foodie, love to do that, but I bring my lunch to work because that parking spot is so golden. I don't want to leave the lot for lunch. And I know there are a lot of coworkers that feel the same way. Sometimes we'll walk to very close restaurants, but anything further from walking distance is in trouble. In summary, we really value Westlake and Thousand Oaks communities. I wouldn't have a job without them. I know that the Silver Star dealerships and the others would not be asking for this project to go through unless it was absolutely the right thing to do for not only the Auto Mall and employees, but for the customers and for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Suzanne Duckett, followed by Carolyn Guillot.
Suzanne Duckett, and I live here in Thousand Oaks. I am so glad that the Auto Mall does so well. They can pay for this project themselves. And the Hiawatha look, they should have gotten on it 20 years ago. If they had gotten on it 20 years ago, we wouldn't be talking about this today. If they make that much money, it's ridiculous to ask us to pay for that. Now, if you're going to give them all that money, then you need to give the mom and pop automotive people the same amount of money to do their stuff. You cannot be unfair. And speaking about unfair, I have never heard the Chamber of Commerce come down here and talk about mom and pop. All they do is come down here and talk about the big time money guys. It's ridiculous. And Rusnick, I don't even think lives here. And Susan Murata, the last time she spoke that I remember, she didn't live here. And I don't know how many people who got up and spoke don't live here. I love the mom and pop guys. I take my cars to the mom and pop guys. I take my car directly across the street to Germantech and to Classic Tire in Newbury Park. They do a great job. I trust them. I trust them. If the Auto Mall needs parking, they should have started this project 20 years ago. Without one doubt. And if they can pay for a big sign that's going to make us look like Oxnard, and better yet, Riverside, I thank the people of Westlake because that's what they're getting. And the people of North Ranch, that's what you're going to get. As the highlight, you can point out to where you live on the freeway. Just turn at the Auto Mall sign. Love it. I love it. I can't be more happy.
All right, thank you. Next speaker is Carolyn Guillot, followed by Victoria Rusnak. Evening.
Thank you, Mayor Adam and council members. I want to remind you of something that Councilmember Fox said a little while ago. He said that in this project they have just completed, they found that the city hadn't changed in its priorities since 1964. I want to say it hasn't changed since I've been here either. There was much opposition to this Auto Mall sign when you had your public meetings before. But for this meeting, I wouldn't have found out about it if it hadn't been a friend of mine who told me. Where are the hundreds of people who opposed the Auto Mall sign before? Why was this meeting given such short notice? Now, there's plenty of people here from the Auto Mall, so they must have had plenty of notice. But why are the citizens given such short notice? I think we need to have a public meeting, more than one public meeting, to get those people to come out. They love this city. It's important that you have their support. The Acorn reported that the Auto Mall had record profits in the year 2014. How did they possibly get that without more parking spaces and an LED sign? An LED sign pointing from the freeway, here's the Auto Mall, as if people can't see it. I'd like to know if the Auto Mall really needs more parking. I drove around there recently and found plenty of empty spaces on the street. Has there ever been a study to find out How many spaces are actually needed? Why can't they put these spaces on their own property like other businesses do, as other speakers have mentioned? On the agenda here, it says that, and Susan Murata mentioned, that they want to put traffic calming features into this increased parking space. Well, are those traffic calming features to calm people down after they see this huge, exciting, glaring LED sign? I think so. I agree with the previous speakers who said it's not the city's job to provide parking. It's the auto mall's job to provide parking. I'm going to end with just saying that we need to have public meetings to discuss this important project for our city. People moved here because of the way it looked and felt. We don't want an LED sign. We don't want to look more like Oxnard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. Victoria Rusnak, followed by Vadim Manzos.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Victoria Resnack. I live in Pasadena, California. My family's been operating auto dealerships in the city of Thousand Oaks for over 30 years. At the moment, we employ 260 people. I have 3 general managers and had some other staff here, but they have to be there to open the store at 6:30 a.m., so they went home earlier. I want to thank my colleagues for coming and speaking up. I think they've said a lot, so I don't want to repeat them too much. However, what I would like to say is I'd like to thank Scott Mitnick and Jay Spurgeon for their constant conversation and discussion and ability to have an open dialogue to try to find a common solution for a problem that the city suffers along with us. I could say so many things, but I guess at the end, what I'd like to say to the city and the residents of the city is that the fact of the matter is that businesses and citizens coexist for a reason. And we all stand here and we hope the police people come if something's wrong, or the fire department shows up, or we can pave the streets when we need to. And that doesn't come for free. That comes from hard work. And I know that my family has invested well over $50 million in the city, well over, but a recent number. Last year, I could give you a statistic that we sold over 4,000 cars. Now, some might not like cars, but we live in Southern California. People drive cars. So I guess in the end, I would like to ask all of you to support this project because it's in the good of the business and ultimately in the citizens. And we've been through this process. This is not something that just popped out of nowhere. We all know that. Everybody here knows that. Citizens, city council, business owners, the whole city staff. So I think the main thing is that we be pragmatic and we honor all the work that we've done in the past and not rehash it when we've already been through public comment. We've been through all of that. I mean, I've been sitting here since all of that. Those have been here much longer than I, publicly speaking. So in the end, I would encourage you to support the project. My family's committed to spending 50% of the cost, which in our situation is over $2 million, to improving the city. I think that's a pretty good contribution for one business owner. It's a significant investment that will beautify the city. It will make it better for parking. There's so many pros. So that's why I'm here. And mostly I'm here for my employees and my colleagues, because in the end, that's what we need to do. We need to move forward in a productive way. So thank you very much for your time tonight. I know it's a long process.
Thank you, Ms. Resnick. Vadim Manzos, followed by John Fonte. Evening.
Good evening. My name is Vadim Manjos. I'm a resident of Newbury Park since 2002, father of 6 children. And I just found out about this meeting and Automall issue just 3 or 4 hours ago. And I ran to speak up. And just listen, people here, I understand as a small business owner, understand Automall people, they protect their business and they want city money and taxpayers' money. And I strongly oppose it. But while listening to everyone, I found a compromise. So I think City Mall people will love what I have to offer, and but I need to share with you a short history. I'm a former hockey player from Ukraine, and my friend Igor Nikulin is a hockey coach for Junior Kings. At about in August or September, I approached Claudia Bill Delapina, I'm sorry, council member, everybody knows her, with a project to build ice rink based on my importation of German glass, which provides electricity with the photovoltaic elements in it, glass. And as any arena, from many sources, I found out ice rink spends about $25,000 on a electric bill. So with a new glass, we can kill that bill. But my offer and compromise is this. I talked to hockey people. Hockey players now make $4 or $5 million a year average. And I know that well, and I talked to, famous hockey players in Los Angeles Kings, and hockey popularity went through the roof. In the last 3 years, as you know, we got 2 Stanley Cups. It's exciting, and I wanted to build first in the history of the United States ice rink with photovoltaic elements in it, and it's on the rise right now. I wanted to even talk to Mr. Obama about it. But how Automall can benefit? We just heard that Automall got the best sales in history of Automall. So and also, when I talked to, I forgot his name, planning department with what's his name? Help me, please. Nurad, some. Well, he told me that I have to purchase the land, I have to have a certain amount of parking, and so on. And but city refused to give me any penny, not even low interest, 1% interest rate loans, no money. Claudia Delapina told me no money, from the city, and. My offer is this. If city helps me with $10 million, as Automall people asking, I would create not just jobs here, but I would create a place of entertainment for our children. And also Automall sales will go through the roof. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manzos. John Fonte, followed by Scott Stanley.
John Fonte, Thousand Oaks. I am disgusted with this sneaky hearing. No prior notice for such a controversial item, Mr. Mitnick. It is despicable. The staff report did not say anything about the sign being indirectly approved. Was only in a supplemental packet that was published less than 2 hours before this meeting, put out by Mr. Prescott, which I presume was done under duress because you guys were exposed for doing this potential Brown Act violation. First off, the sign design was approved by a 4-to-1 council that no longer exists, and that council majority were all big receivers of campaign contributions from the Automall. Now there are only 2 current council members who have received Automall contributions. Maybe the new council now, or a new council after June when the empty seat is filled, will agree that a big sign and one that is an electronic billboard is inappropriate. Let's not be Oxnard. TOTV, can you show this ad, please? TOTV, thank you. Look at the big sign. I read the staff report, which was woefully deficient and embarrassing. There was no analysis, no proof, nothing showing that there is a parking problem. But if there is a problem, I have to ask if it is actually created by the dealers themselves. Do they cram inventory into spaces which should be used for employee parking and for customers? Why won't they continue to do the same with additional parking, which, by the way, as was previously said, would only be about 15 parking spots per dealer? Whoop-de-doo. I read that proponents are saying that lending the dealers is a good investment, but again, there was no analysis, no proof of such. The city has an investment review committee who reviews and approves investments. Where's their opinion? If I were on the committee, I would be offended about being bypassed. 4 years ago, the council tried to sneak in a sweetheart deal, below market loan, but again, there's nothing in the staff report now addressing specific rates or guidelines. Just, oh yeah, we'll get 2%, 2.5% to 4.5%. Yeah, right. Wait till it comes through. We're never going to see market rates. I also don't see any analysis of the sales tax revenue payback. That's amazing. Just trust us, is what the writers of the report said. That a report could be so deficient yet is presented to the council is just unbelievable. Do the right thing, slow down, stop being sneaky. Do not approve the Community Facilities District, the not-so-mellow RUSE, R-U-S-E district. Do not approve the humongous electronic billboard. If the Auto Mall is so successful, as I hear tonight, then why do they need a public handout? Listen to the residents. It's been proven that that's what the residents want. We don't want more meetings to wear us down like you guys do. We don't want the sign, and we don't want this giveaway.
All right,
and don't separate the sign. I'm sorry, you let Mr. Anderson speak for 3 minutes and 50 seconds. Do not separate the sign from the CFD. Deny both. And lastly, I would like to say, I bought a car recently in Ventura, and I will not buy at the T. Oaks Auto Mall, and I recommend others to do the same until this matter is settled once and for all. This is going on way too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler. And our last speaker is Scott Stanley. Evening.
Mayor Adam, council members. My name is Scott Stanley. I'm a proud member of this city. I actually, unlike some people said that they were dragged here, well, I was. My wife dragged me here. But it was because of the beauty of the city. It was because of the schools, because of everything that you guys have built. I'm here to speak about a couple of things. I wanted to speak about how great the city is for a few minutes, but I think that some things need to be answered. It sounds like all these things were done behind back doors, but it was just shown that 4 years worth of meetings went on. There was 12 public meetings. A couple of the council members were involved in them. A couple of them should know about them. We supported them. Originally, there was an ad hoc committee that was 25 citizens. It was citizens, and they recommended a 35-foot sign with LED that had a component a lot larger than it is right now, more like what's in front of the city. That was rejected. We went back to 2 more meetings. That was rejected. We went back to 2 more meetings for another year. That got reduced down, and we were asked to do a 25-foot sign. The current sign is 20 feet. The Oxnard sign that was just shown is 75 feet. We are not Oxnard. We will never want to be Oxnard. We want to be good business partners. We want to be great citizens. I'm very proud to be Christine's staff member or co-employee. We have great people like that here, and we have heard from them. We have heard from them time and time. The sign is not on the issue tonight, but I guess it is the issue tonight, and it shouldn't be. It was already decided. It was decided by citizens who decided larger than it is. We've made the compromises, and we've also made the compromises in terms of funding. Everybody's pointing out that it's 20 or 30 parking spaces. As a business person, I cannot quantify 20 parking spaces for the amount of money we are going to spend. It is the beautification, it is the Wayfarer signs, it is building streets that are big enough to handle the traffic. The Auto Mall, ironically, was founded when I was born, and it hasn't changed much. But the city, or the freeway in front of it was a 2-lane freeway when I was born. What is it now? What is everything else in our city? All the other improvements that we are doing. I remembered a Walt Disney quote that said, "Clean bathrooms won't bring you customers. but they'll keep dirty ones will keep them from coming back. I think that we have a problem in the city that we can't compete with some other auto malls or some other cities that have beautified. But I don't believe we need to be Oxnard. I believe we need to be the city of Thousand Oaks. I believe that we can remain to our uniqueness. I believe that council should respectfully keep to their commitments that have already been made. And I think that a compromise can be made that everybody can win in this city. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay. That concludes our speak. Yeah, okay. That does conclude our speakers. I also have written statement cards. 72 in favor, 1 opposed. So we'll enter that into the record as well. Okay. Let's go back to staff as far as any clarifications you'd like to make based on what you've heard from the speakers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me start with a couple of points. I think a clarification is needed on exactly what council we're asking council to approve tonight. And it's two things. One is approval or authorization to go back out to bid with the public improvement project, the plans and specifications, bid those so we know in today's current bidding environment what the project costs really will be. And the second is approving a concept, a funding concept. The approval of that concept is not approval of a community facilities district. It's not initiating a community facilities district, et cetera. So that's an important distinction because the ordinance that was approved by City Council in 2011, the link of the Auto Mall sign that was the sign design that was approved is the approval or formation of the funding mechanism or the CFD. That's not happening tonight. This is a step in the process that needs to occur so that we can move the project forward. Later this year, once bids are in, we have more certain costs. Those questions will be recommendations will be made to answer those questions and brought back to City Council. So I think that's an important clarification that should be made.
Anything else?
No, that's it, I think.
All right, I'm going to, because the business of the sign has come up from a number of the speakers, I'm going to ask Ms. Noonan to clarify exactly what we are being asked to vote on tonight, and also perhaps to give just a little history, voting-wise, of how we got where we are right now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Mr. Spurgeon indicated, the sign is not on the agenda tonight. That's not what's before the City Council. In fact, the City Council approved the project, the public infrastructure projects, the parking, the streets, the landscaping, the beautification measures. That project was approved back in 2010. In 2010, City Council also considered the Auto Mall sign, but at that time they deferred a decision on the Auto Mall sign in 2010, and the Auto Mall sign was actually approved in 2011. It was adopted by the council via ordinance in 2011. So both the project, the public infrastructure improvements, and the sign were approved by previous council in 2010 and 2011. Since that time, if you look at the chronology of events in the staff report, the very last page, since that's happened, there's been about 20 additional actions that have taken place for staff to implement the decisions that are made by City Council. That's what staff does. If City Council makes a decision, staff is charged with implementing those decisions. So Herbs Road, if we want to talk about Herbs Road, is a perfect example. City Council gave direction to staff to widen the streets, underground the utilities, add some sidewalk and curb and gutter, and since that time, staff has been implementing that. So whenever City Council makes a decision, staff implements it, and since 2010, there's about 20 items or matters that staff has done to further implement the project and the sign that was already approved. Now, what the ordinance does on the sign that was adopted in 2011 is it approves it. It approves the sign, and there was also an additional resolution that was approved that night that adopted the design criteria, the size and the dimensions and so on and so forth. Those were approved back in 2011. But it doesn't become effective until the city approves of a funding mechanism. So the sign itself has been approved. The only issue before the council tonight is consideration of a conceptual funding arrangement, which will have to be brought back to the city council in the future, and also whether or not to go out to bid on a project that was previously approved by the city council. So that's where we are tonight. I wanted to also talk about a couple of things that were mentioned by members of the public. A couple of comments received by various members is that there's a Brown Act violation because the sign wasn't agendized. Again, consideration and approval of the sign is not before the city councils, therefore there's no need to agendize it. It's not a Brown Act violation because that's not what's being considered by the city council. Another question is whether or not there's any illegality with respect to consideration of a funding arrangement between the Automall Association and the city. There's not, because as indicated by staff numerous times, the funding goes strictly 100% to public property. It's no different than us paying for all of the other types of public improvements that we've done throughout the city. It's the same thing. So the city has the ability to spend money on its public improvements. The only difference here is that we have a willing private partner who's willing to assist the city in paying for those public improvements. So there's no violation of law in considering this conceptual agreement, and it's not a Brown Act violation for not discussing the sign because that's not what's before the council tonight. So hopefully that clarifies, and I can answer additional questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Noonan. Anything else from our staff up there? John Prescott, John Adams, Jay Spurgeon. All right, then let's go to our council members. Claudia, Ms. Bilda LaPena.
Yes, thank you. It is understood that the sign was approved in 2011. The ordinance, we had to create a completely new municipal code in order to accommodate that sign because of its size and the LED, which is unprecedented along the 101 Scenic Highway. That was publicly stated. The ordinance adopted at that time also states that the sign can only be constructed once and if the city reaches a financial agreement with the Automall. Until then, the sign cannot be constructed. By entering this particular agreement, tonight it's in concept only, but further down the road it will be real. And then the municipal code will take effect.
Yes, it's implementing what was already decided by the council. It's implementation of what the council has already decided and directed.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is what I wanted to clarify, that it was the construction of that sign depends on entering a financial agreement between the city and the Automall.
It doesn't require entering into an agreement. It requires approval by the city of a funding mechanism, whatever that mechanism may be.
Okay.
Not necessarily a joint agreement between the city and...
Correct.
The city can decide to pay for it itself, the whole thing itself. That's one option. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Mr. Price. You'll be good. All right. Mr. Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to move the recommendation 1 and 2 to authorize the staff to solicit construction bids and to approve the concept of the public-private partnership for the public improvements for the Automall. I think tonight's hearing, I think the city attorney did a pretty good job of summarizing what we're here for this evening. Notwithstanding the fact that we have some folks that would like to bring back past council decisions. Unfortunately tonight, while folks, when they make their public comments, they're not held to really other thing is just their perspective. But we have a long and very detailed record with respect to the Automall that goes back, as you heard testimony tonight, back into actually the early 1990s. The fact of the matter is this project was approved certainly in its designed in 2008. It's 2015. And these were approved through noticed public hearings. Many times it went through the Planning Commission hearing. But this project design in terms of the parking and the public improvements is certainly no surprise. And the fact of the matter is, I think many folks that are here this evening were either around or participated in those hearings even back in 2008. As it relates to the sign, as the city attorney pointed out, the sign's not on the agenda tonight, but there were numerous meetings with regard to the sign. There was a citizens committee appointed to deal with the sign. There was a full planning commission hearing dealing with the sign. There were subsequent meetings after the planning commission hearing. There was a study session held by the city council to get information on the sign. In fact, even members of the council now that were not members of the council participated in those study sessions, and ultimately the sign was approved in 2011. That was 4 years ago. And so while certainly I can respect those that maybe disagreed with the decision, coming back now in 2015 because of the funding mechanism is, I would say trying to get another bite at the apple in a decision that has already been made. And those decisions, as I mentioned, were noticed. There was full participation, and many times during some of these hearings, people agree with the decision made or they disagree with the decision made, but this was a decision made 4 years ago. Tonight, we are faced with a funding question on whether to fund public improvements at the Auto Mall. To me, it seems like a fairly straightforward question. While there was a number of issues raised with respect to Ralph's Parking and some of the other private enterprises that have private parking, I would submit to you that anyone that has visited the Auto Mall in the last decade has to come to the conclusion that there is a severe parking problem. I don't think there's a member of this council that has visited the Auto Mall for various meetings or to buy a car. There's simply no place to park. There is no place to park. I think tonight's hearing is closely synonymous with the angled parking in front of the lakes. Again, for some, a hotly debated issue, but we have seen through history now that the angled parking has been a huge success. It is used by folks, and while it may help the individual businesses, it's something that certainly we look to continue as we look at the development of Thousand Oaks Boulevard, which is certainly one of the city's plans. There is a safety issue. If you've been in and around the Auto Mall when the car deliveries come in, everybody's familiar with large transport trucks that supply the new vehicles. They have to park in the middle of the street. It is a safety issue for cars driving by. This is something that I think rightly the city needs to be concerned about. Again, tonight's hearing is on a concept for a funding mechanism, and I think it is money well spent for public improvements in an area that, no doubt about it, will benefit local businesses. And these Auto Mall folks, whether you like it or not, they're local businesses. Maybe because you see the name Ford or Chevrolet or Mercedes-Benz, you equate that with big business. But the fact of the matter is these are privately held dealerships. Whether folks live here or not really shouldn't be determined by the city council. What we really ought to be looking at is responsible investment in our infrastructure, and clearly this meets that requirement. Clearly this meets that requirement. So with respect to our process, we have gone through an extensive process that really goes well past a decade. With respect to our plan, this is a plan to improve an area that is in grave need of improvement. And with respect to finances, I would submit to you that the city of Thousand Oaks is probably the most conservative city in the nation with respect to how we do our public infrastructure investment. Our finance folks are recognized year in, year out by the California League of Cities for the great job that they do. Mr. Adams has given us this blessing. Mr. Mitnick, himself a finance expert, has looked at this extensively. So has the council. This is a sound financial investment with virtually no risk to the city. From my perspective, while people may have a different opinion with respect to different elements of this is good for Thousand Oaks. It's good for local businesses. And I do agree with one of the speakers in conclusion. You have to be able to rely on the word of your local city council. You have to be able to rely on the word of your local city council, even though years may pass. Changing the rules because council has changed is bad faith. That's not what we do in Thousand Oaks. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm moving for recommendation 1 and 2.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fox. Comments to the motion, Mr. Price.
If I could, yes. Thank you. And as everybody on the dais here is aware, I was not on the council back in either 2008, 10, or 11 when this took place. I was serving on the Traffic and Transportation Commission, and I did attend a number of the meetings that were held with respect to the signage. I am aware that that sign was approved in 2011 by a different council. But again, we've heard over and over again that that's not what we're talking about tonight. We are not discussing the sign. We are simply discussing whether or not we are going to allow construction bids to be taken and approve in concept a funding mechanism. I, for one, take a look at this, and I know that recently my street in front of my home was repaved, resurfaced, and nobody knocked on my door from the city and asked me for more money. We have the auto mall dealers who are willing to put in $4.9 million of their own money. I submit to you that that probably covers the cost of the 330 additional parking spaces. The rest of what will take place out there are public improvements. We're repaving their streets, we're beautifying, we are making improvements to what is a dangerous situation, and that's what government is supposed to do. So I am very much in support of the motion, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Ms. Bilda-Pena.
It's true, we've been at this for quite a number of years, and I think I have evolved over time in that I actually voted to approve spending money on the design, the first phase of the auto mall. I did that, although it's not something that I normally would have done. I did. I also understand that these improvements could benefit the city of Thousand Oaks. With which I have a problem is an unprecedented LED electronic billboard on the 101 freeway, for which we actually needed to come up with a new municipal code in order to make it fit, in order to make it legal. And by entering an agreement, financial agreement or funding agreement between the city and the auto mall, we're giving the green light to the construction of that very controversial sign that really caused an uproar in our community. Yes, there was compromise on the size. The size is still 6 times bigger than what we have now, and the LED electronic billboard will also be bigger than what we have now. And that is really what I question. And it is unfortunate the way the ordinance is written that the construction of that sign is directly tied into the funding. And it should really have been bifurcated. And I'm just wondering, I'm not sure exactly who the point person is, or there are several, for the auto mall, whether there is a willingness to compromise regarding the sign. And I'm not sure to whom to address this question, because several auto mall people, owners, employees spoke on this issue. But I think there can be a win-win situation for the community in that the auto mall will get its improvements, which will benefit the auto mall, as well as coming up with a sign that is acceptable to the community. So I'm just wondering whether, or, yes? That is the question that I am asking of all of the members of the auto mall.
Point of order here. I don't think the sign is on the agenda and therefore can't even be discussed.
But the sign is not on the agenda.
You're correct. I mean, we're not here to redesign the sign or in any way. I think Councilmember Bilda-Pena is not attempting to do that, and I think it's a legitimate question, and I wonder if anyone in the Automall, maybe John Anderson or Susan Muratas, would care to answer that. You know, under the circumstances that you've heard tonight, ask again, please, Councilmember Bill LaPena.
The question was simply because this sign is inextricably linked to the funding, whether we like it or not. I voted against it, obviously, 4 years ago, but I did vote for the spending of the money for the design phase of Phase 1 for the public improvements. And because it will be, or it is an unprecedented sign for which we needed to come up with a new law, is the Automall willing to compromise on that? Because the word compromise was mentioned by one of the speakers.
Well, let me just say this. Tonight is all about the parking and all about the need for the parking and the traffic calming elements of this. It's dangerous there. It's not just when the transport trucks are there. It's pulling out of each of the side streets onto Automall Drive. It's dangerous. That's what tonight is about. It's not about the sign. We've made dozens of compromises. And I don't know why an ordinance had to be made for an LED sign when our sign is no bigger than the one that's right out in front of this building. So you've already allowed an LED sign that big, so I'm not sure why the ordinance was created, but that's not the issue. It's all about the parking. So I can't speak for all of the dealers, but I know that that is our number one concern. So would we consider another compromise on our sign? Perhaps. When that comes before this council, I'd say perhaps we would.
All right.
Is that good?
It's an honest answer. Thank you for coming back down. Well, okay.
Hi, I'm Victoria Resnack again. And I'd like to answer your question because I can see that it's a valid one. It's clearly a concern of the citizens. I would agree with the analysis by Councilmember Fox and Mayor Pro Tem Price and City Attorney that we've actually rehashed this quite a lot. So I don't find this to be a new topic of conversation. I can tell you that the kind of investments that we've made in our own personal facilities under the guidelines of the city with many, many days and years of approvals and permits and all of those things to make sure that we comply and are part of this community in a good and positive way. For us to step up and say to the city, you know what, this is so important for the city and for us as business people that we're willing to take on 50% of the cost of the project. I have to tell you that there is not a chance that I would support or pay for any parking improvement in the event that the sign is off the table or really challenged in many ways, because we've already been through that. And at some point, we have to rely on the process. The process has gone through. Sadly, we had an economic situation that we all had to deal with. Again, I'd like to reiterate my absolute, not only appreciation, but just acknowledgement of the city and the staff to go and deal with the economic development, redevelopment money with the state. That was an uncomfortable, difficult challenge that I think a lot of people don't recognize, maybe in the general public, to go back to the state. And at this point, the Resnack organization is happy to contribute to the parking improvement project because we've been part of the process for over 20 years. But if it comes down to having to compromise on a sign, I'm sorry that I personally, representing my family and our investments in the community and the $9 million of sales tax revenue, there's no way. So I just want to tell you personally from our standpoint. I don't speak for the Automall, I just speak for my family. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll have to end the questioning on that note. Any other thoughts, Councilmember Bill LaPena, or comments to the motion? No. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to make a lot of points have been made tonight, and I don't want to be redundant, but I'd like to make a few general comments about this situation. There's about $6.5 million on the table here. $1.4 million that the city's already spent, that if this project doesn't get built, basically goes down the drain, and another close to $5 million that the Auto Mall is willing to put up to fund this project. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, and that needs to be taken into consideration. As far as the potential loan for this community facility district, our current portfolio, as Mr. Adams mentioned, is yielding barely 1%. So one of the speakers said that there will be some kind of sweetheart loan at 1%. No, that's wrong. The portfolio is yielding 1%. The going rate on the loan right now is around 3 to 3.5. I don't want to get into all the nuts and bolts of the financing, but I'll speak to that in just a moment. I will say that the Auto Mall has pumped a lot of money into these dealerships. I visited a couple of them, and the infrastructure is archaic. It hasn't changed in 50 years. And no one is asking, the Auto Mall is not asking us to improve their parking lots. We're talking about public streets here. Public streets owned by you and me. That's what's being improved, or potentially being improved. One of the speakers brought up a good point. What about the smaller businesses in town? Don't they deserve some help? I thought about that, and in talking to a number of folks, the Auto Mall has a tremendous multiplier effect with small businesses here in town. They do business, and believe it or not, when I was a kid, I was in the auto parts industry. They do business with auto parts companies. They do businesses with vendors, with suppliers, with body shops. I can't begin to calculate the kind of benefit the Auto Mall has to those very small businesses that were just brought up. I used to be in the auto parts business. When sometimes you need a part, you would go to the dealer to get the part, and that's what happens. And there's a lot of a multiplier effect in that regard. There's a parking problem, in my opinion, but it goes beyond just the parking that's not available at the Auto Mall. There's conflicts with the neighbors in the area. The Country Florist Center next door is complaining because Auto Mall people are parking there. The Verizon Center, I forget the exact name of it, same problem. You got spillover from the Auto Mall. So there's these conflicts that are constantly nagging at the center beyond just the lack of parking for the customers. When you talk, and I want to bring up another point. When you talk about jobs here in Thousand Oaks, I learned something very interesting. The Auto Mall doesn't just employ mechanics anymore. It's way beyond that. They're technicians now, and they earn 6 figures at this Auto Mall, 6 figures. And these are folks that don't necessarily have graduated from 4-year college and went on to get their master's degrees, but they're folks that have the opportunity to earn a way above average income that the Auto Mall offers, because they're technicians now. They're not just grease monkeys anymore. It's a whole new world out there. And one of the speakers mentioned, and you just can't deny this, it's a very, very competitive business, extremely competitive. I talked to the owner of Kemp Ford. One of his biggest competitors are other Ford dealerships in Simi and in Calabasas and the like. But Oxnard, Calabasas, Simi Valley are constantly pressuring our Auto Mall, and that competition needs to be addressed. And one of the ways to make the Auto Mall competitive and keep the business here in Thousand Oaks is to build the infrastructure. And I'm gonna throw out something here that hasn't been discussed tonight. It's kind of a kicker that I want the council to consider, and maybe we'll consider it at a later date, but this has been on my mind. This loan that we might ultimately give through the Community Facilities District would be approximately $5 million. It would generate an income flow, a very reliable income flow for probably about 20 years. The going rate, can't say exactly what it would be, but based on the going rates right now, you could be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of about $150,000 a year in interest payments to the city. Well, okay. Do we want that to flow back into the general fund to get a portion to all the little agencies here? My idea is this. Let's get some community benefit from that. Let's take that guaranteed cash flow and use it to support our open space fund, which for years we've been criticized about not having any long-term income flowing into the open space fund. In fact, it was one of the visioning priorities. One of the people in Thousand Oaks want a steady income stream into that open space fund so we can complete the Ring of Green. Well, here's a way to get a steady income stream, and it could be the council's discretion to allow that. The second part that we could use for this income stream would be our community arts groups, which are notoriously suffering as far as how they're being supported. We can only do so much. If the council saw fit, this could also create a very reliable income stream to support another one of the visioning priorities, which is the cultural side of our city. It's a thought. It's not going to be decided tonight, but I'm going to push for that if this thing gets through. Open space, community arts. It's really beyond the control of this council tonight from the decisions that were made in the past. And I'll be right up front, and most of you know this about me. When I was on the Planning Commission, we were faced with this issue. I asked that it be divided, and I voted yes on the parking, and I voted no on the sign. I didn't begrudge the fact that the Auto Mall needed a new sign. I just wasn't comfortable with some of the aspects of it. I even went so far to present an alternative sign that I had designed by a very prominent local architect to the city council. So I have had my problems with the sign. But I'll tell you what, I would have a very difficult time in walking away from $6.5 million that's on the table here, and from what I think is ultimately a long-term investment into the benefits and the growth of this city. And I can't see myself walking away from all that to basically kill a sign that's already been approved. Now, I did my best to get this sign redone. And it was redone to a certain extent, and it may not be exactly the way folks want it. But as my fellow council members said tonight, the sign is really not an issue tonight. What's at issue is what I think is a project that's urgent, has a long-term benefit to the city, and that can be used with some creative thinking to fund some areas in our city that could really use some help. So I'll just say this. I know I'm getting a little long-winded here. I apologize. I can only ask, as far as the sign goes, that the Auto Mall, going forward, realizes the sensitivities that are involved with the sign, and possibly consider working with our community development department to perhaps revising the sign in some degree to make it just a little more palatable. And that would not involve some kind of a rehearing or anything like that. We're beyond that now. I don't think it would be fair to put anybody through the 18 months that we went through the last time. We're beyond that now. But I would hope that there's a potential for that. So we have a motion on the floor, and I think we've all had our say, have we not? Councilmember Bildo de Pena.
I know I will maybe surprise some people, but I am not against the improvements at the Auto Mall, the infrastructure. As I mentioned, I have evolved over time. My concern is triggering the construction of a sign that has divided the community. And as a result of that, what I will do tonight is I'm going to abstain from the vote in hopes that while this is approved and steps are being taken to enter into an agreement for the CFD, that we will find a compromise regarding the sign. But this will come before us again, and because it has to be finally approved, and I just wanted to be on the record for stating the reasons why I'm not voting one way or another. I'm keeping hope alive. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. Mr. Fox, anything?
I don't.
Mr. Price? All right.
Let's vote.
Then let's vote.
The motion carries 3-0 with Councilmember Bill de la Pena abstaining.
All right. Thank you. And thank you all for coming down. Well, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we have no commission or committee reports. We have no council issues. So we're going to go to city manager follow-up. Mr. Mitnick.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, no additional follow-up from comments tonight. The next city council meeting will be in 2 weeks on February 24th. At this point in time, we're looking at one public hearing involving the annexation and pre-zoning of a few properties in the Kelly Estates area in Newbury Park. We will also have a study session on the proposed 2015, or excuse me, on the user fee study. It's the user fee study session. That's it by way of my comments for the next meeting.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mitnick. Ms. Noonan, would you announce our closed session, please?
Yes, we have 3 closed session matters. First one is conference with legal counsel on existing litigation. City Thousand Oaks petition before California State Water Resources Control Board pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9A. And then 2 workers' compensation claims, one on behalf of Patrick Boxley and one on behalf of Ryan Debani, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.95A. It is unlikely I'll have anything to report.
All right, thank you, Ms. Noonan. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to adjourn the meeting this evening in memory of Kathy Edwards. Kathy was a member of the city family. She worked for the City of Thousand Oaks for 19 years, and that was almost from the beginning of the Civic Arts Plaza, and she was part of the box office team. She loved the theater, she had a strong work ethic, and she never hesitated to step up where and when she was needed. She was so well known that Civic Arts Plaza patrons asked for her by name, knowing she would always go that extra mile and help them all with all the options and to get that perfect seat and the best value. She knew patrons well, and if she saw a new show scheduled that may be of interest, Kathy would even pick up the phone and call our patrons and offer them a ticket on the spot. She was proud of her heritage. She loved everything that was Irish, and she loved her New England Patriots almost as much. And we believe it was Kathy who whispered in Seahawks coach Pete Carroll's ear to call for a pass on 2nd and goal that helped bring the Super Bowl trophy home to her beloved Patriots. That's nicely written. Kathy was a wonderfully passionate force of nature. She will be greatly missed by all those who had been graced by having her in their lives. She leaves behind a loving family, friends, and a city family who already misses her dearly. And she's left us with all many fond memories, and she will not be forgotten. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in this evening, and we will adjourn to our next meeting. Thank you.